Good evening and welcome to our ALUTA CONTINUA Townhall collaboration between the Social Newsroom, which is under Semabox, and Africa Uncensored. My name is Mark Masai, and with my big brother by figure of speech, John Allen Naum.
Asante, Mark. Big brother by figure of speech. Let's keep it there, senor. Yeah, but Mark, yeah, it's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much to our live audience here and to everybody who's following on online on our YouTube links, our various platforms. Obviously, the discussion comes at a very heavy time, a very, very difficult but interesting time in our history in this country, and Semabox and Africa Uncensored thought that it would be best, rather than do this on our separate platforms, to collaborate and have a collaborative discussion here between ourselves, all of you here in our live studio, and everybody else online. Mark.
And this is a very organic conversation. It hasn't been sponsored by anyone, just need to put it out there first. But we'll be opening it to the audience here, and we have a very, very, very good audience, and we appreciate you coming here in good time. Nimeanza kusalimiwa online. Kuna watu hapa wamesema, Mark, tutakusalimia kwa sababu they've been online since 6 p.m. and we encourage the participation and comments as well there online. And I believe we will also simulcast this on X Spaces in collaboration with our respective pages at the Social Newsroom and Semabox, because, hey, we've seen that X is a new space and X marks the spot. But anyway, let me introduce you to some of our guests. I have Shefa Okore. She is a governance and development policy expert and a very good friend of mine from back in the day. Good to have you with us this evening. Thank you for coming. After so many years, she hasn't been in such a discussion. Asante.
Welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. It's good to be back.
Yes, and for a worthy cause as well.
Absolutely.
I'll also introduce someone who is joining us online. This is Boniface Mwangi. He is the People's Watchman and also an activist to some, a journalist to many as well, who have interacted with him in that capacity. The reason he hasn't joined us physically is because there is good reason that he stays safe wherever he is. So he'll be joining us online, and that is if online hakutanyongwa. So he'll be joining us shortly with his views as the journey that has been for the last about 4 weeks actually. It'll be a month from the 18th of June. So we also have Hanifa Adan, who is also going to join us physically though. She is currently following the postmortem of the bodies that were found in Mukuru kwa Jenga at Kware area, because the postmortem procedures started this evening. So she's gone just to monitor that, and then will join us here shortly. But we also have other panelists here with us physically.
Other panelists in studio, and I mean, Mark, just before we introduce some of our panelists in studio, I'm just trying to recall the last time, or if ever, I've heard of a reason for someone being late for a live discussion as being having to attend a postmortem for tens of people who have mysteriously been murdered and nobody has a reason. Just to underscore the heaviness of this past week and the heaviness within which we're moving into this week. But nonetheless, we're going to try and have as broad-based a discussion here. And one of the people who very graciously decided to join us is Mercy Tarus. From the Kenyan Home Initiative, but many people will have known her from standing up and speaking truth to power all those years ago. It seems like a lifetime ago, given how the events of this month have shaped up in Uasin County with regard to the Finland school fees saga. Mercy, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody here again and to Salimia Pia?
Sitawasalimia hivyo. Thank you all for showing up. My name is Mercy Tarus from Kenyan Home Initiative. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us, Mercy. To my right, in the blue suit, looking dapper, David Duke, lawyer and a crisis analysis and management specialist. If ever there was a time in Kenya that we needed someone like that, this is a person to speak to. So, David, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, last two. To my immediate left, we have a researcher, curator of The Elephant online magazine, as well as an economist, in as much as he doesn't like being introduced as one. Darius Okola, thanks a lot for joining us as well.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And last but not least, Senator Busia County crusader for human rights for many, many years, a leader. We discussed this before we went live. This is the first politician who's been on time for anything live. So he made the distinction that he's not a politician, he's a leader. Okay, Omtata, thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. A small correction.
Yeah.
Busia County does not have a senator.
Yeah.
It only produced a senator for the Republic of Kenya. So I'm a senator of the Republic of Kenya from Busia County. From Busia County. Not a senator of Busia.
All right. Noted. Well noted. We shall try and keep that in mind during the course of this discussion.
It's important because we have misunderstood and we begin pigeonholing ourselves.
Yeah.
I should be able to go to Nyeri and demand accountability from the governor. That's why I sit in the national office. I don't sit in the... You have been pigeonholed by not understanding that people simply elect you, but you are a servant of the Republic. And when you take that oath, you swear in the name of the Republic, not your small cocoon. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
So, Senator from Busia, representing everybody in Kenya. Thank you very much for that distinction. Mark.
I like that distinction. Not too long ago, he was at, I think it was Uhuru Park, when people were saying this actually should be probably the leader. So he's really separating himself. Don't localize him. He's from the full country, not just from Busia. Asante sana kwa kuungana nasi. And for those who are online, we will be with you in a bit. But there's a reason why we call this edition and this collaboration Townhall, ALUTA, CONTINUA. And we'd like to get a feel from the room what it means to you in the context of what we are going through. So if we could have from the production team just a mic handy, and I'll just ask anyone who could freely say what it means to them. ALUTA CONTINUA. You could start. You're looking right at me, so you could start. What does it mean to you in the context of what is happening right now? You can handle your mic.
All right, let me hand.
For me, it means taking stock of what started as an organic movement, bastardized by some. Soon enough, they had to take it seriously, and it's a force that has met so many people off their guard, and it's important for us to understand where we are in that context and what comes next so that we don't lose sight of where we're headed.
All right, thank you for that. Your name? Sorry you didn't get your name. It's good to know. This is why we have a town hall.
My name is Nyawira Muhure, an active citizen.
I like that. Anyone else? For them, what ALUTA CONTINUA means? I see a hand right there, right behind you. Rev, you could just introduce yourself and say what it means to you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Reverend Mark Okuru Echakara. I come from the great county of Busia, where Senator Okia comes from. For me, when I think I look at ALUTA CONTINUA, where what I see is an opportunity for us as a nation to have an objective conversation, even as we seek to reimagine our republic and to have a look at everything objectively and contextually and circumspectly, so that we don't just pigeonhole ourselves and railroad ourselves to run with one thing and ignore the other, so that we are able to appreciate the full context of where we are as a nation. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I think as a young person, the first thing that came to mind was Shere. Continue. ALUTA. Yeah. But anyway, more seriously, I think ALUTA CONTINUA for me means 1963, struggle for independence, 1992, struggle for multi-party democracy, 2003, end of Moi, and then here we are. But the struggle still continues, so let's do this.
All right, just to give John a break on this. Oh, there's someone? Yeah, go ahead.
Just to give also a Pan-African perspective, as an Ethiopian living in Nairobi for a long time, I also see this as a call for our neighboring states. We're looking at elections in Rwanda, which are questionable, to say the least, movements in Ethiopia that are overwhelmingly authoritarian. And so what's happening in Kenya will have a domino effect, and that's very inspiring and very encouraging.
I like that Pan-African perspective. Anyone of the ladies behind me? I know she's not looking at me, but ALUTA...
What does it mean? Lakini Mark, that was just an ambush. That was an ambush.
But anyway, hi everyone. My name is Michelle Nyaga. For me, I think every day living in Kenya, the struggle continues in each and every aspect that we're living in right now. It may sound funny, but we really have to ensure that there's a country for our children, and that's why I'm here.
I wasn't laughing because it sounds funny. I was laughing because of how deep that is. In Kenya, it is a daily thing. ALUTA CONTINUA.
True.
And that's why I handed the mic to you. It's called intuition. I could feel it was coming from this end of the room. Yeah, but John, there's a reason why we titled it this way.
Yeah, for sure, Mark. And it's picking off of pretty much everybody in the room's answers. And it's really the question of struggle and strife that Kenya has been through over the past 60-odd years, perhaps even longer if you consider our pre-independence. But to this moment today, and locating our struggle in this moment today, the economic struggles, we are in deep economic crisis. And that's something that we need to have some sort of resolution to. We are in political crisis. As we saw on the 25th of June, the mace was taken out of the National Assembly, and that has huge symbolic power, right? And there needs to be resolution going forward. There is a crisis of identity in my view. I think this is really a moment where culturally we are starting to think about this question of who Kenyans are, what Kenya is, what is our political identity, what is our identity culturally, right? And how do we define that going forward? And obviously there's the question of the current crisis, right? There have been huge protests, there have been numerous deaths. And I think it's important for us to remember that we are sitting here in the context of over 40 deaths that happened just within the past 1 month out of political, economic, and cultural questions. So this really isn't, the ALUTA CONTINUA of the bush struggles of Frelimo, but rather speaking more locally to the struggles that we are having here and the hope that we'll be able to resolve these questions going forward.
You speak about, and one death is one too many, but we have at least on record, at least for now, as at today, over 40 have been killed, and over 400 injured, and there's still families looking for their loved ones who are missing ever since the protests began. And there are still people who are living in fear because they feel that they're being followed. Case in point, some of our panelists who have not been able to join us physically. And this is because they feel that they're being followed and tracked down in whatever they're doing, because somehow the government feels they need to find who's the leader of this movement. And in that way, try to stop it at the source, because it seems that's the thinking. But as we have seen, it's been an organic movement over the years. And on the 25th, as you said, sites that we never imagined, at least, yes, when the peaceful protest began, people did say, let's occupy Parliament. It happened. That mace was in a civilian's hand, very symbolic. And after that, on the 26th, the president said he would withdraw the Finance Bill 2024 and take it back to Parliament. Then we have on 11th July, the president dissolves the cabinet. And after that, we see the resignation of the IG, Japhet Kwame. And someone might sit and ask, since we started the peaceful protest, since it started, if you look at those developments, and this is where I come to the panel, and I'll start with you, Mercy. Would you say it has been worth it since the peaceful protests began, with all the developments that we've had?
First of all, I think this thing started way before it became 1 month ago. This thing started probably 1 year ago, maybe 1.5 years ago. And it has just been boiling. You know, online we are saying things are boiling nicely and we think it's funny, but the pressure has, again, been increasing. Because you see, you put leaders in position, you want them to do something for the people, and then they don't do that, they take it, the pressure keeps increasing, and eventually people are just tired. And it is not something that began like 1 month ago, it is not something that began 3 months ago. This thing has been building up to what we saw since 1 month ago. And so I think it has been worth it. we would not be having this discussion otherwise. And also, in an ideal situation, we would never be here. Things would be working, the system would be working, and everything would be going as it should. But now, because they are not working, we have to come out. And because everyone came out in their own capacity, then it has been worth it.
Mercy,
Yes.
I want to stay with you for a second. If things were working, where would you be today?
If things were working, I would be pursuing my master's in Canada. And if things were working, 379 others of us in Wasingishu would be in either Canada or Finland. And it's not a thing to escape. We are not trying to escape Kenya. We are trying to go learn what is this that these people are doing that we can bring back to our country and make things work. So if things were working, if we were in an ideal situation, I would be pursuing my master's.
And yet you're here with us.
Yes,
years
we are
later.
having this discussion and we have lost people. We have lost our friends, we have lost our family members, and some of us are being followed and threatened. And you don't know whether you will be here tomorrow or the day after that, but we have to do this.
It sounds like you're speaking from a very personal place when you're saying people have been threatened, people have been followed, people have had to change their lives. Could you share with us what you mean?
Okay. So, since this thing started, a few people have attributed this 1 month ago thing, our struggle in the Gen Z protests, which I think is wrongly named, by the way. I don't think it's a Gen Z thing. It's a Kenyan thing. Everyone is. It's not only Gen Zs who are suffering. It's not only Gen Alphas who will suffer in the future if we don't do this. Our parents, our grandparents, all of them. And so when I say people have been threatened, it's actually true. So first of all, when the Finland-Canada scandal came to the light, I was offered a job. I declined because it's not about me. And again, I was not doing that looking for a job. I want things to work. And because probably they have not worked, give me back my money. Now, I was offered a job, I declined, which even if I were returned into that situation 9 months, maybe 10 months ago, I would still decline. So there's that, and then they would call for dialogue, come let's talk. Have you asked for a job that we have refused to give you? Have you asked for an appointment that someone has refused to grant you? Mercy, what do you want? Is it, because if it's a job, we are going to give you that job. If it's money, we are going to give you that money. And what they do is they get to the closest people around me. They get to my family. They tell them, you see, it is better that we have this dialogue so that we can sort this issue, but it is not an issue of money. It is not even an issue of a job. Again, I did not do that. I did not stand up because I wanted a job. I want things to work. And so it is true. Threats have been there. They have been following and calling family members and telling them, tell Mercy we have said this, tell Mercy we have said this, tell her to keep quiet. But until when? So it is very personal.
Schaefer, she said something here, and talking about Gen Z as it has been labeled. Some people feel there's an importance to labeling it as Gen Z-led movement and revolution, talking about fearless, tribeless, and leaderless. As just building up on what she has said, and also answering the question of whether all this has been worth it, which you have been following. Is it credit where it's due when we say this is a Gen Z-led movement?
Wow. First of all, I just want to say to every young person who's been in the streets and has been calling out for accountability and leadership that this has not been your issue alone. And you're very right, because this is not a Gen Z issue. it is Gen Zs who've come out, kind of being seen as leading this, and it is wonderful. And because credit must be given where credit is owed, right? Because also we are seeing a lot of the political elites wanting to kind of co-opt the movement, which is like, fuck the government. Anyway, what I want to say, first of all, I mean, you know me, you invite me, somebody's gonna be cast. This is the thing. But what I want to say, first of all, you asked a beautiful question, what does ALUTA CONTINUA mean? ALUTA CONTINUA for me is very personal because it always means every end is always a beginning. And we've seen that with movements because also we must connect the dots backwards. These movements are not just for specific contexts. They are happening now, but they're not for now, right? These are issues that have been here. These are things that when I was in the streets, and I still am kind of sort of, we were talking about them, right? And the same reaction that all the young people are getting now is what we got. We were being told, oh, we are being funded by white people. And I'm like, but white people don't even live here. And if they live here, they don't get to suffer the way we suffer in this country. So I'm like, get it together, right? We were told we are trying to cause anarchy. We don't understand. The government has institutions. Leaders need time. Wait until the next election. All of this stuff is so unimaginative, boring, and old. And I'm like, the government is so tiring, right? So coming back to, was this worth it? I think every time anyone speaks so boldly and apologetically about any pain, any sort of injustice, any sort of thing that presses them about their country, it is worth it. You know, even if you're a soul voice, even if you're solitary, I think it is always worth it. And I think even just imagining where we would be now without seeing how incredibly magical and messy this entire moment has been, you know, and it is beautiful because I think we also have to make home within the discomfort, and we have to make home in the mess because change is messy. Because people who do the change are complex human beings, and it is going to be messy. And we will feel a lot of discomfort, but we hope that the ruling class don't get to sleep because it is absolutely worth it. So I'm always, have people talk and talk always. Yeah.
That's a great answer. And I want to pivot to Senator Omtata. You mentioned the ruling class. In some way, shape or form, at least politically speaking, you sit amongst these people. And on June the 25th, while some were running away in tunnels and really fearful for their life, perhaps having moments of reckoning, what was your feeling about that moment?
Well, first of all,
you just hold your mic up. So
mic up.
First of all, my office is on the 7th floor of Bunge Tower. So I had a bird's eye view of what was going on. And we had complained about the armed men who had been brought. They did not have any identifying mark other than the rifle, the sniper rifles they had, and they had a red whatever. So from my side, initially we had said that we go and meet the protesters and have them address us. Some of us volunteered, but the security people would not allow us to do that. We were stopped. And then the breaching, first of all, I believe that if the Kenya police wanted to stop anybody from getting into parliament, there was no force that could overpower the police. The police allowed it. The police simply allowed the thing to happen. They pulled back, but the people who are in civilian, whom we think we don't know who they answered to, are the people who are pulling people down. And I think after the first few shots were fired, that's when there was that surge that came in. And when you go to parliament, there's damage in parliament to areas where I know the protesters never reached. So the question is, what's damaging these things?
No, you're asking a very heavy question because the investigations so far have revealed that there was a gentleman who was on the precincts of parliament days before the protest, switching off CCTV. And as a senator, are you trying to say that the damage was engineered by someone else?
The damage was engineered by somebody else, and even if you look at it, you have not seen anybody with a Motolov. Even the police lorry, why was it allowed to burn to ashes? There were many vehicles with water that would put it out. How do you burn a mahogany table to ashes within minutes? What accelerant are you using? The story in Parliament has not been told. Why is it that the tables were shown broken and not the plates which were used for eating that food? You see? So you begin analyzing what happened there. It was after the snipers had killed people, they had to create a backdrop to justify the violence. That young man who said, Mr. Speaker, sir, he was inside the people's chamber. Why was he killed? Did he threaten anybody? And so, when they ran into the tunnel, and some of us had tried to prevail on the National Assembly. First of all, there's been a conspiracy between the National Assembly and the executive not to bring the budget to the Senate, because the Senate are very few people. We have a Senate of 67. The nominated senators, that's 16 women and representing youth and disability, the 4, do not have a vote. So the only people who vote are the elected senators. So we are only 67. We are able to have a meeting of minds on anything. And that's what the executive has been trying to avoid. So where even the constitution is very clear, the budget is supposed to come to the Senate, but from Uhuru days, they have never done it. They have avoided the Senate. So we're largely bystanders to what was happening. But when these people began running into the tunnels and what have you, when the place had been breached, you would realize that there was no violence from the protesters. You saw the physically the disabled member of parliament, the bishop. He was not harassed. And even very many MPs who ran into these young people, they were not harassed. Nobody was harassed. No MP was hit. People were mocked, yes, but being hit, nobody was hit. That much I can say. So from where I was and from what I saw, there was no justification for that kind of violence. But I still believe that if anybody knows if anybody has got any sense, he should have seen that the police stepped back. And I don't know if you know that on that day there was no arrest during the demos. No, not a single person was arrested. That's why you need to see that this struggle here is a Gen Z led, but it has got very many sympathizers. And people are beginning to understand that this country can be better managed. And even when they wanted to do the adjournment, because the National Assembly reconvened quickly and under panic, they rubber stamped the decision to get the military out. In the Senate, we met and said we have to vote it out. We have to vote it down. So when they learned of that, they moved a motion to have the Senate go on adjourn, which we defeated and refused and said we are going to stay put and we are going to continue engaging with whatever is happening. So what for me happened is that the Kenyan street, which I must say from my own background, I'm very happy because when we used to protest, the first time I protested, it was 1994, and I protested alone. When Moi wanted to take over the National Theatre to convert it into a parking. I don't know how many of you remember that story. And we planned that we go out and demonstrate. When the JSU lorries came there, people became very smart. They began saying we can resist through our mind. So they melted away, and I ended up doing a demo of one person. I was arrested. I was locked up at Central. I went on a hunger strike. We have the theater today. So there was a time when people used to vilify the street, especially the journalists used to look at people going on the street as idlers, until that one time when they had to come out with their mouths sealed and with pens because something had happened to them, and they found that the only way they could express themselves was the Kenyan street. And the street, for me, is the highest arena for political engagement. And the ruling class lives on the street, not in parliament. Because if the street decides, that's the law.
In your view, Senator Omtata, does Parliament, the National Assembly, I should say, does it, after June the 25th, have the legitimacy to continue on as it did prior? Do you think that Parliament can legitimately continue to function in the way that it did, given the kind of dissent that's been expressed up until this point?
I would answer that question by referring to her. I think we have to go beyond, before 25th. And even people have been asking, who is the leader of this resolution? The leader is, for me, William Ruto. He's the one leading this resolution because he's doing things that are really annoying people and getting Kenyans angry. And they come, he's the real leader.
Do we agree that William Ruto...
We all agree, yes.
So, in terms of Parliament...
So I'm the stranger in Jerusalem here. Okay.
In terms of Parliament, look at how it happened. When Ruto was elected, he did not have a majority in Parliament. The people of Kenya did not give him a majority. He has ruled using a false majority. He enticed MPs to cross over, which was wrong. So he has been ruling using a false majority. So Parliament has not been representative of the people because the Parliament people elected is not the Parliament sitting today. Even in the Senate, we had 23-23. I had a deciding vote as an independent. But now I think it is 16 against the others. He has bought off people to go across. So when you ask that question for me, I think that the Parliament lost its legitimacy the day the majority changed from being in the opposition to being in government through machinations and through influence. So that false majority is what the people fought and rejected. The only saving grace for me would be for Parliament is if these people smell the coffee and go back to the formation the people gave them. Go back to the sites on which they were elected, and then that way they proceed. Or they weed out the chaff by recalling these people, now that the courts have made it a bit easier. But for me, Parliament and the National Assembly, I may not want to condemn it so much, but maybe there are design problems that need to be addressed. When CDF was given to the MPs and not to the executive like it's done in India where it was borrowed from, most MPs just look at CDF, and so it is a quid pro quo. The government simply has to up the CDF, and the people and the members of Parliament say, okay, why do we sign? And they approve whatever they want to approve. So for me, if CDF is taken out and put back to the executive, so even bring the money for the constituency, but the money should be managed by the executive, we shall restore some sanity in Parliament. But if that confusion continues, whereby we interfere with the design of the institutions, whereby it's designed that a legislator should not be an executor. If we go back and sanitize that, then it can continue serving. But if we don't sanitize that, then Kenya does not have a parliament, and especially the National Assembly is a very, very, very sad state of affairs.
Really sad state of affairs, and you brought a perspective that I haven't looked at it that way, and sijui kama itamfikia, but to say that the president is a leader of this revolution effectively by the decisions he's made is a perspective we haven't quite looked at, but maybe something that needs to be at the center of discussion. And I'll bring it to you, David Duke, because in your expertise as a conflict resolution expert, the dialogue was meant to have started today, some type of dialogue. It hasn't. For the next 6 days, they said. And the conversation has been who should be in that room and what should be the irreducible minimums. Do you think the approach is wrong in how we're going to this issue called dialogue to bring sanity because we're in a sad state of affairs?
Thank you, Mark, for the question. If you'll allow me, I'd like to first pay homage to Honorable Omtata. I am an admirer, and I think I like and stand by everything you stand for. So thank you for being who you are and carry on with what you're doing. If anyone was expecting dialogue, I don't know what y'all are smoking, but it was never going to happen.
Well, this is from a crisis analysis and management who is asking us, is anybody smoking anything that we don't know about?
I don't mean that in any facetious manner, but our president, if you'll allow me, I'll look at it from both sides of the fence. Our president on the 25th was faced with something that he didn't think was going to happen. That is why that is why Parliament sat and, you know, the bill went through even after all the protests. He didn't expect it. He just thought it was going to go the way people will. To use the words that someone told me as I was going home on that day, what watapiga kelele and then they'll go home. Well, walipiga kelele na wakachoma. So that is how he understood that, you know, you can't just, you know, bulldoze your way through doing things. So that was the first wake-up call for him. And what he did after that, and I think this is something that we've both all seen throughout His Excellency, the President's career in politics, is that sometimes he gets head rushes where he goes, I think, I don't know whether he's being advised correctly or he just does things based on what he views is right. Either way, it's fine. But you cannot go on TV on the same day where the people essentially have told you, look, we don't want this thing. And you go on TV and call us, you know, you say that we are treasonous criminals. I mean, that's problem number one. Problem number two is now what he did the next day. I think he should have taken a leaf from Kibaki. Kibaki was the master of inaction. Sometimes you need to let the fire die down. Let people say their bit, and then you come back, give it a day or two after, because, for example, Mark, if I steal your car right now, and I drive off, and I come back with it, and it's been banged up, you're not too happy with me, are you? No. And here I am trying to tell you, relax. You don't want to hear anything from me. So if I return the vehicle and say, yo, we'll talk tomorrow, give people the time. This is a psychological aspect of conflict resolution. You must give people time to get their minds right so that they can come back and listen to you. In politics, and this is something that my good senior might correct me, I stand to be corrected. In politics, sometimes you need space to operate and show people that, look, okay, I've heard you. And the fact that he has a lot of reputation for talking and not doing much, don't talk. Just, you've heard us, okay, I'm not going to sign the bill. Then just keep quiet, just leave it alone. In answer to your question, in terms of the dialogue was never going to come because, number one, I refer to the book by Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Something part I remember is the hardest battle to fight is with an enemy you can't see, you don't know. So if our president is the leader of the revolution, so is he essentially fighting himself? Is he essentially fighting himself in the sense that if he's fighting a war with us, or sorry, not us, if he's fighting a war, and it's a war that is a movement that has no leader, no tribe, and they're essentially fearless. So if we are supposed to view, currently right now we are viewing him as the leader of the movement. So I have a question for all my panelists. Is he essentially fighting himself?
I mean, that's a good question. I think the senator from Busia has weighed in. I think I'd ask an additional question. So if there's no person who he can speak to, and maybe perhaps this, without putting words in the president's mouth, this is possibly the reason why today's dialogue didn't kick off. No, if there's nobody who he can speak to, and we've seen movements in the past that are essentially, and I don't want to give this sort of war tag to what's happening here, and I'll just use it for theoretical purposes. A guerrilla, it's almost like guerrilla warfare. You're fighting an enemy that you can't see. You're dealing with an enemy that you can't see. So from a crisis and analysis point of view, how then do you resolve that? Because anybody could be your enemy, anybody could be your ally.
I think the president is in a very unique situation here. And when I said I'm going to look at it from both sides of the fence, I'll start by the government. Regardless of what we all feel as Kenyans, he still has a job to do as the leader of the country. And the one thing he cannot do is show weakness. This is just from a purely professional point of view. He cannot show weakness. The moment he shows weakness, Kenyan politics, he will be eaten alive. So he must do what that's the reason why the cabinet had to go home. He had to re-establish his, someone talked about you asked about the legitimacy for the current, well, there you go. There's your answer right there. He needs to clear out and bring back a legitimate face for it. So if you cannot, if you cannot find the leader of movement, then the best thing that you can do in such a situation is action. What is the cause of the movement? What is the rallying cry for the people who are clamoring to be heard? Don't sign the finance bill. He hasn't done it. What else? Corruption and all that and whatnot. It is simple action. And then Kenyans, we are not dumb. We'll see, like, for example, there's someone who told me, a colleague of mine who told me that our president likes to tell Kenyans what he has done right. And his comeback was, the moment someone has to tell you what they are doing right, rather than you noticing it by yourself, that already is a problem. Because if you tell me, that's when I now notice it, like, oh, you've done this. So in his case, in answer to your question, at the moment, the dialogue, as per my own opinion, was never going to happen, because at the end of the day, if he is the leader of the country and you don't know where the source of the problem is coming from, then it becomes very difficult for you to, stamp out the fire, because you don't know where the source is.
Yeah.
John, because we're looking at covering politics, economics, as well as people power, or the people. There was one issue you wanted to bring up with Darius about, because it's part of the dialogue.
Yeah.
On the other side, much as you're talking about a homegrown solution or whatever they're trying to get to achieve, there's that dialogue or conversation that needs to happen with those who Kenya owes money to, which brought us to the mess that we are in.
Yeah.
And I believe it still fits into this conversation.
It does. Darius, I want to bring you in here. And over the past 10 to 15 years, at least in the former, sort of a half or quarter of those years, Kenya was among the African poster children of this narrative, Africa rising. An economy that's doubling in size every few years, almost to a decade, seemingly upwardly mobile, able to afford the things that we couldn't before, even offering political milestones in various ways. And yet we are here at this moment, like dissecting and deliberating on what is now the other side of this. Something that was called, a youth bulge problem, right? From perhaps an economic standpoint, and even speaking into the political economy of this country, like, why are we here?
I think by the time, you mentioned 10, 15 years ago, by the time President Kibaki is leaving office, what was our debt? It was about 1.8 to 1.9 trillion, thereabout. Then we went into the 2010s, and there was just this debt addiction. It was money for all the toys, for anyone who could, up there. And there was a significant breach of, the safeguards that we put around how we borrow, who gets what money, where does it go, how do you account for it within every financial year. And by the time, I think, let's go 2022, that's when the former president leaves. I think he borrowed about 6.7 trillion. I remember when he was doing his last, is it Jamhuri Day, June. So by then we're at 8 trillion. A lot of this money did not do the functions. It was borrowed. And the Auditor General has been at it again and again and gotten in trouble with the political class because of that. Now, the current president has come into power. He inherited that problem, but his mistake is the fact that he did not institute critical steps within, he's basically lost 24 months to be able to put in place mechanism to trace some of that money that was lost. Yeah. And partly also to be able to begin to wind down some of the money we borrowed. In fact, he borrowed what, in the first year of his presidency, about 1.43 trillion, and basically pushed our debt past 10 trillion. Now we're at 12. Now our economy is 15 trillion. It might look like we have, headroom, but we're almost maxing out our tax capacity. We are maxing out our debt capacity. So we're in trouble, but in many ways, this is the kind of trouble that many facets of it we could have avoided, both in terms of the domestic borrowing, which crowded out businesses, SMEs who borrow from banks, but also externally, we got into the kind of deals, the kind of changes we saw, for example, on the SGR, on this expressway that we have here. And there's a whole bunch of other projects, smaller in measure, but no less lethal in terms of what it did to our public finance management. And so where he finds himself right now is there's really no solutions. It's just a couple of scenarios. One of them, of course, which is a possibility we might have to consider, but has significant consequences, which includes debt renegotiations. And including also, of course, also following up on a state capture report. Who took some of this money? Where did it go? What did it fund? Is some of it still in the country? How do we recoup that money? How do we go, essentially a public debt audit? Where is this money? If it did not work here, where is it? And a significant part of that is how it affects the young people. I think I've been on record before saying that one of the interesting things facing millennials and Gen Zs is what you call death of process. And the economic side of that
Wait, death of process or death by process?
Death of process.
Of process, okay.
Yeah. Death of process is basically, you're looking at the millennials generation, and Chef has mentioned this. 7 years ago, we had this conversation. There are people within government, some of them senior advisors, who are very dismissive. I would want to know what they think about it right now, it would be interesting. But then you look at millennials, there's a significant stagnation in terms of income, wealth, and opportunity, especially economic opportunity. You're looking at Gen Zs, it's gotten worse by the years. And one of the ways to look at it is through what we call income adjusted for inflation. So income has been stagnating. So what you're earning 2010, adjusted for inflation, is less than what you're earning now. Even if it's sheer numbers, it's higher, Essentially, inflation is eating your income. And that has affected both millennials, but it's also affecting the younger generation. Let's remember Gen Zs, the oldest is 27. So they've been in the workplace for a while.
Before I return to you, I just want to ask a question to the crowd, and we can do this by acclamation. How many of you here were radicalized into joining this movement because of how much pain you're feeling at home because of your economy, or the economy? That's a good half. All right. Any other reasons? Perhaps you're not agreeing with how the country is being run. How many agree with that assessment? And why if the assumption is that you're supporting what's happening on the streets, or you have an opinion about it, what's your opinion about how the country is being run? Is it being run well? You can raise your hands.
I don't think you'll get much of
that. That is the toughest crowd I have ever seen for a question. All right. The reason that I asked that, and it was very deliberate, because Darius, you've posited a number of things that the president can do, right? State capture report, looking into odious debt, so on and so forth, renegotiation of debt. But the call on the streets is Ruto must go, right? And we have to assume that this possibility exists, that maybe Ruto does go. What happens the day after? Because those problems don't go, but what happens the day after? And assuming whoever it is that forces him out of power, if that were to happen, because this is a real scenario that we're facing now, what happens with these real problems? What would be the step forward? I think there are a number of people who are trying to exercise their minds around this question.
I mean, definitely we have constitutional provisions for his absence. There have been presidents before him. There will be others after. So his absence is a possibility that we don't just entertain. We know we can, work around. I think the thing we'll have to keep in mind is one of the ways to go about it. And I mean, when you think about, for example, the finance bill, this one that we rejected, how much was it going to collect? 326 billion. This is a 4 trillion economy. When you look at how much we collect through each finance bill, it's usually about 60% of the target. That will have come down to like 5%. That's not something you want to ban a country for, like especially what he did. He could have simply withdrawn that thing. There's a way you can cut it out of the MDS, the ministries, departments, and state agencies. But he, in a sense, decided he's going to have it his way, and clearly it's not working out. So one of the ways, of course, is what they're considering right now: cutting down on expenditures, fixing some of the loopholes within the government Public Finance Management Act. Some of it includes, keep the government away from domestic borrowing. Let the money go to businesses, to the private sector, who generate actual value. So one interesting thing that has happened with this government in it actually started the last year of Uhuru. There's this obsession with tax as a revenue model. They're willing to kill the economy to collect taxes. Everything is, where can we get some money? And of course it makes sense because that's how the government runs. But beyond a certain point, you have to begin asking yourself, are you providing the kind of macroeconomic stability that allows the country to prosper? Are you allowing the export model that enables you to have more revenue coming into the country? Are you willing to fix the creative economy? Are you willing to put and to effect the public safeguards that we put around public finance management? So these are things that are well within our capacity to effect. And the reason they haven't for the last 2 years, I wouldn't know. They better, they had a better chance to tell us what's happening over there. Yeah. But as I said, we missed a critical opportunity to do these things over the last 24 months because the opportunity was right there.
Darius, I'll want to write on that question about the options that they're there. There's renegotiation. Some might say throw care to the wind and default, as it has been the case in some republics. But I just want to try out and see if Boniface can hear me. And if he can, unaweza sema ALUTA CONTINUA. Unaweza nisikia Boni? You can hear me, but I can't hear you yet. So tunaendelea tu kutest. So labda ni kwa sababu ya the choice of word. Unaweza sema godha?
Godha tena.
Now we got Sawa, karibu sana Boni.
Am I in?
Yes. Unasikika, unaweza salimia the panelists as well as the town hall audience that we have here. Wasalimie.
Nasikia salamu ni ALUTA CONTINUA na kesho ni maandamano.
Utaifanya virtually ama utakuwa in person? Kwa sababu leo umekuja virtually.
Tutaona juu. Tutokelezea manze. Sisi waoga. We're not cowards.
So
just that evil loves darkness. So when it's dark, you have to minimize your movement, especially if you have a big day tomorrow.
Right. Boni, unaweza tueleza, because in the first half of this, we were talking about the gains, someone might say, that have been since siku ya kwanza ulikuwa kule bunge ukaambia watu tunakuja hapa on a Tuesday. I think the first day we went on protest was the 18th. And since then, we've had Parliament was occupied. Then there was the withdrawal of the Finance Bill 2024. The cabinet has been dissolved. And we're hearing about the IG resigning and someone else is in acting capacity. And now there's talk of dialogue. For you, what have been the wins in your view, since we started the peaceful protest?
Okay, let's start with the losses actually. Sorry, let me disconnect my sorry.
You understand it's a fluid situation.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I'm back. So the wins. Let's start with the losses. Actually, we lost a lot of people in the second week of the protest. We lost about, I think as of today, 51 people have died. We have many people still in hospitals, injured. Some are paralyzed for life. Some lost their limbs, and they died a useless death. No one deserved to die because of the peaceful protest. So that's the loss. We have lost so many people. So as we talk about the gains, we cannot. So sorry about that. I don't know how to disconnect that. Can I ignore it?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello.
Yes, we can
So
hear
I
you.
can continue.
Yeah.
All right.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Okay, keep going. All right. So I was saying, I think the biggest loss is that this country lost its innocence on that during the protest. People went to the streets on a peaceful protest, and they never went back home to their loved ones. So that's a very big loss. And the gravity of the matter is that no one deserved to die in a peaceful protest. But moving forward, talking about the gains, our president was very, very arrogant. He was very aloof, never used to listen. It was either his way or the highway. And for the first time, he's able to listen. Before that, no one used to get through to him, but now he's listening. And because he's listening, we are going to get perhaps a new cabinet that is going to be cleaner. We're going to get a new AG, and then there's a discussion about compensation for the victims. But I think in this entire argument is that the lies the president has told since the protest started. He said that there was treason that was committed. No one has been arrested. There were goons involved. No one has been arrested. The police who killed peaceful protesters, no one has been arrested. So there's been a lot of talk without accountability. And so the call is, as we do stock taking, why does he want Kenyans to go to a dialogue without first addressing what really happened on June 25th? Because people were murdered by people working for Kome and the president, because the commander-in-chief. People died. He came on TV and accused Kenyans of being treasonous. No one has been arrested for being a coup plotter. And today, the president went a notch higher and accused Sport Foundation of funding protests, which they're not doing, which is a fact. And it beats logic that the most powerful man in this country, who happens to be the president, who has all arms of intelligence, from the military intelligence, the national intelligence, the DCI, cannot provide evidence about their alleged funding for protest. What's making it very sad is that my number was shared online today, but I did for that. It's called a number as well. Trash I'm getting my phone as they're getting. But the question is, instead of the president behaving like some guys online who have no powers, why can't the president say, if so-and-so have been funded to destabilize the country, they should be arrested? If so-and-so has received this kind of money, he has our bank account details, he has our phone numbers, he has our M-Pesa statements. So I speak from a place of bitterness. Bitterness because I've gone to too many funerals. I've spoken to family members who lost their loved ones, and they're so broken that blood had to be shed for Ruto to listen. And so as we do stock taking and say, yes, we have won, this is like a battle, but we haven't won the war. The war is going to be very long before we can say that you have won anything. Because even now, as we speak, he hasn't gazetted that he fired the cabinet secretaries. Yeah. So maybe they're still there. I've seen a statement today from the First Lady, Office of the First Lady, which last week was non-existent. Yesterday he said he was at a Harambe, and a few days ago he said no Harambes. So it's a master of doublespeak. So let's not think we have won anything yet, because we don't have anything tangible we can say we have won. And as I conclude about stock taking, why can't the president call the family members of those who died and apologize? Because he hasn't done any of that.
Bonnie, you raised some, incredibly important points, especially about being contrite when it comes to family members. And I want us to get to that in a moment, but you spent a good portion of this first, response talking about the president's speeches today. with regard to funding of protests and perhaps the negative or malevolent role of foreign agencies, foreign authorities, in supporting protests that overturn governments, right? Now, here's the difficulty with this issue, right? This has happened in other countries. This has happened where foreign entities, foreign agents have supported the overthrow of legitimately, democratically elected governments, right? And unfortunately, you're now in the frame for having allegedly, received funding to be able to do these things. And I ask this knowing that we are kind of in the same boat, because I've seen my name floating around on the same. My responses I'll keep in my heart. Today it's you to respond. Look, for there to be any credibility to any of the things that you're saying, there will be some people who are saying then, well, tell us, how do you fund your operations? Is that something that you have difficulty saying?
So what operations, John? If you go online and you see people like Shady who have been able to crowdsource for money to buy flags, people are crowdsourcing to pay for hospital bills. There's no money. Money leaves a trail. So if there's money going from my account to people's pockets or from my phone to people's pockets, there'll be a money trail. So there's no operations. I went to do a video in the street, say, let's go to the streets. It's an easy thing. To design a flyer, it takes like 10 minutes. There's no money involved in that. The reason why people don't think that these things can happen without money, because they do everything for money. That's the reason why. Politicians get paid to go to rallies by the president, so they feel like no one shows up to a protest without being paid. People go for free. I'll give you an example. So to fill Uhuru Park as a politician, you need at least 30 million shillings. You need to call people from the MCAs, you give them some money, they mobilize. A week ago, we had a concert at Uhuru Park, and it had done thousands of people who came there. No one was paid to be there. Even the artists performed for free. And the government said, this is impossible. But ask the artists, after the artists left the concert, they were called by the police, and the ICE was calling them, are you sure you're not paid? It wasn't cash you're paid. No one was paid. So there's a lot of patriotism and selflessness in this movement. People are giving their time, the equipment, everything they can give towards making Kenya better.
Yeah.
But because the people who are fighting us are used to using money, they can't understand it.
Okay, so it's a clash in values that seems fairly obvious from what you're saying. Bonnie, I want to use you as a pivot to go to the next part of this conversation, which is, the politics of this moment and perhaps even questions of leadership of this moment, right? And a lot of time has been spent talking about Gen Z being tribeless, fearless, partyless. That's a slogan, right? Tribeless, fearless, partyless. Something that as our crisis analysis and management expert here has said, is akin to a guerrilla movement. You don't know where the head or the tail is, right? That's useful when it comes to being able to confuse the enemy, so to speak, right? But a point in time is going to come when real, tangible things need to be done, right? And people are looking around for where this influential voice from within this movement is coming from to say, okay, X and Y needs to happen. Y and Z needs to happen. Otherwise, Ruto must go. Otherwise, this is not going to happen. So I am speaking in many big English words to say, hakuna kiongozi, right? And that's one of the arguments that is being made, that there's no real or visible figurehead to this movement. Is there one? To your mind, is there one, and does it need one?
There's a leader in the movement. There is a leader, actually. And the leader of the movement is the Kenyan Constitution. It's right there. Everything that you need and everything you're demanding is the Constitution. So you don't need to have an individual speaking on behalf of everyone. Everything we're asking for can be found in the Constitution. So when you say that when Ruto appoints a new cabinet, they must meet Chapter 6 of the Constitution on leadership and integrity. It's all there. So there's nothing to change the Constitution. You're actually saying we want to recall members of Parliament. So make sure that you properly constitute IBC allow us to register to vote, and then we are good to go. When you tell Kenyans, when you tell the president that we want values, then Chapter 10 of the Constitution. So everything is there. So there's nothing that needs to be said by a figurehead. And it's very deliberate to do that, because we have a history in this country where when you have individuals that can be compromised, or they can be targeted, or they can be killed. So the reason why there's no one speaking for the movement is saying that we're trying to keep the movement safe so that people don't get targeted. Like now, if you look at the trolling today, they're trying to figure out who's the leader of the movement. And there's no one, actually. There's nobody leading the movement.
Bonnie, let me jump in here because on one of the days, I think it was Tuesday, on 25th actually, we bumped into each other on the streets, and you were busy telling people, please head on home because it's not safe for you. Mm-hmm. And you faced the brunt of the youth that were there or whoever was there, and you had to actually seek some safety because still they told you you're not our leader. So there's actually a harsh side of that conversation. But let me write on that question of leadership in terms of identity of the cause, because when it started, we had the hashtag Occupy Parliament, then Reject Finance Bill 2024. Well, both things have come to pass. So tomorrow, what is the cause? What is the push? And you've just said in your opening remarks, it's going to be a long war. Will it ever stop?
Yes. I think it's what we're asking for is justice for the victims at this particular stage. Justice for the victims. We need compensation for the victims, and we want the killer cops prosecuted. You're also saying that we were not involved in the housing levy. We need to scrap and bring back NHIF. No, scrap the housing levy, bring back NHIF. We don't know this HIF thing. The demands are still the same. I think the demands are just saying, will the president be accountable? Because the problem we have is that if you leave the streets, you not listen to us. And as Umtata said, I think the street is the biggest stage you can ever have, because when you disrupt people's lives, the government listens. And that's why the Constitution actually gives the right to protest. So we're asking people, tomorrow is a holiday. If you can't come to the streets, please stay at home, wherever you're in the country, in solidarity, not only for the people going to the streets, but also in solidarity with those who have given their lives for Ruto to come down. And basically, we actually agree that Ruto is elected. So when we say Ruto must go, he doesn't have to go tomorrow. But if he thinks he can lead us, he can go home. And the argument is, you can't kill us and lead us. So you have to choose. Are you going to continue killing us, abducting us, jailing us, or will you actually lead us in a responsible manner? And one of the things I really despise about our president, he lives in an echo chamber. He just listens to himself. When he gets cornered, he gets on top of a vehicle and goes to Nakuru and just says nonsense things. The president has the Harambee House. It's an office. He has never stepped in there. I've never seen him, since he was elected, he's never used that office. He uses the status like a palace where he can come and control you and tell you what to do. You're telling the president, you're given a job to go to an office. Wake up in the morning, go to Harambee House, go and sit there and work. Maybe even on tomorrow, on Tuesday, we're asking the president, go to Harambee House, you can find it at Harambee House, and tell you what we want you to do. Since we can't come to State House, right? Go to your office, come to your office. Because the man is being invasive. He says he wants to listen to young people. So you're asking the president, if you're a man enough, tomorrow is protest day. Go to Harambee House. We'll come there and we'll make our demands.
Mercy, if President Ruto was sitting here with us, let's play a game of imagination here, right? So let us imagine that President Ruto is sitting next to you, right? What is the first thing on your heart that you'd like to tell him in response to some of the things that have been said here and some of your own thoughts?
One life lost is one too many. I said this and I will say it again. We cannot play a game of numbers when it comes to people's lives. We cannot afford to do that. We cannot come and ask about whether it was 40 people or whether it was one person or whether it was 15 people or 30. We cannot afford to do that. That is the first thing I will tell him.
Na ya pili?
Ya pili. Repentance without restitution is just hot air. You cannot fire people and send them home ceremoniously.
Repentance without what?
Restitution.
Repentance without restitution is just hot air.
Yes.
Okay.
You cannot ceremoniously send home your cabinet and then have them evade prosecution and then expect us to clap. It's like you want us to clap for you. You want to clap for a fish for swimming. That's what it's supposed to do. So how do you expect us to come and clap for you because these people were incompetent? These people did not have any merits to be in such offices. We can look at Murkomen. We can mention very many names. We can start with Murkomen. We can go to Nakumincha. We can go to Linturi. And these people are people that hold very crucial ministries. You cannot joke with the Ministry of Health. You cannot joke with the Ministry of Agriculture. And you want us to, oh, Mr. President, we are so happy. Thank you, you have done. Really? No. The third thing, and the last one would be, I do not think you represent the needs and the wants of the people of this country. You do not. There's something that is bigger than the people of this country that is propelling you. We don't know what, but it is not us.
That's interesting because that kind of leads us to that question of the day after, you know, in case Ruto aende, or in case there's some sort of change that fundamentally robs him of his legitimacy. Senator Umtata, you spoke on the floor of the Senate after the dismissal of majority of the cabinet that, in fact, this just robs him of his legitimacy further. So I think it would be, you know, perhaps a little obtuse of me to ask you whether you think that he's legitimate now. But is there a way back for William Ruto? Is there a road to Damascus somewhere that we are not seeing?
Well, I think what William Ruto is trying to do is to... Nobody asked him to take a haircut. He's trying to get a haircut. We never asked for a haircut.
What did we ask for?
You know, when you see these people on the street, when these people are marching, they were not demanding power. Neither did you hear anybody shout power, power, power. The people are demanding good governance. The people are demanding rule of law. And when you look at the law that we deal with, is a law that also sets a standard of who can occupy public office. And if that becomes the smoke test, Ruto can't stay. He doesn't qualify. Yeah, he's as dirty as they come, and all the other people. So for me, I think that the question of good, first of all, there can be no vacuum after him. We have a constitution that's very clear. And that constitution provides for mechanisms. The drafters are not so dumb as to say that Parliament and the executive can collude to dissolve the IEBC and decide not to appoint an IEBC, and then they can be in power for 20 years. People are saying that the IEBC must be appointed for us to have elections. Have they thought of that? That if we MPs on our side decide that with the executive that we are not appointing IEBC, does that mean we shall stay in our offices for 20 years? Does the Constitution anticipate a situation like that?
Well, I mean, the Constitution might not anticipate a situation like that, but think about a number of contraventions against the Constitution that have taken place over the past 10 years. Yes, the moment right now is a constitutional moment, but what makes you assume that if Ruto were to go, that this vacuum that the Constitution occupies wouldn't be occupied by, say, the shadow state that occupied that gap when Mwai Kibaki supposedly was unable to rule in the first 6 months of office, that occupied that space after 2008 when we thought that we were going to have a transformation, that occupies this space that has allowed for budgeted corruption to continue. I mean, to the counter argument to the question about the Constitution occupying this space is that there are real and present forces that have worked deliberately to supplant the will of the people and put in place their own desires. Thus the situation that we have today. What makes you assume that they aren't somewhere plotting now to fill a vacuum should William Ruto exit?
I don't assume that they are not, because if you had the president himself speak on 25th, you basically saw him read a script that showed that there was a counter movement, what was happening, and he was like part of that counter movement where he was dropping names and branding people. But what I'm saying is that if we are going to have fidelity to the Constitution, let's assume the most unfortunate thing happened today, that both Ruto and Gachagua suffered heart attacks. Would that be the end of Project Kenya? It would not be.
No.
Because there are mechanisms there, and that in the absence of the two, even to go down to the Chief Justice can preside over this country for some time as we organize our politics. So the mechanisms are there. As for elections, I'm one person who has never agreed that we require bombers. I'm one person who has always argued that fidelity to the Constitution would put us at a point whereby elections for the president are conducted by the presiding officer in the polling station and the returning officer at the constituency, who then announces the results of that constituency. And we end up with 290 results. And even you people in the media can call. It's only Kenya where people cannot call an election. Because after people have voted, made the decision, they hide the decision so that they can manage that decision and come up with a result that they think serves the interests of the powers that be. So for me, is that if we just allow this, say we are going to be faithful to this Constitution, it has inbuilt mechanisms to continue functioning in the absence of two individuals in power. And I think the vote of no confidence that was expressed in the Kenya Kwanza administration by rejecting their budget proposal, and then the mayhem that followed in terms of the deaths that have happened, or which there has been no accountability, even remorse has not been expressed. Those two situations, and these are deaths that occurred when people were exercising their constitutionally appointed or anointed constitutionally guaranteed rights to be able to petition the authorities. When all that happens and then people are killed in that process, and there's no accountability and people continue being killed, then whoever is in power has lost legitimacy. And the best thing that can happen in this country is for us to insist on the pressure that he gets out, so that for the first time, a movement to save this country can go the whole length to the conclusion. There have been abortions all the way. And there have been people, interlopers who have come in to cash in and to benefit from the blood the people have shed. Even the Mau Mau thing never delivered. It was stillborn. All these things have happened. Even the Agbogobo revolution was stillborn. All these movements. So people have died. And again, we are seeing other groups trying to come in and see if they can cash on to this. So for me, what should just be demanded is that the people who are killed on the streets, and especially at Parliament, the People's House, when state agents shot down the people, they were basically overthrowing the Constitution by declaring that the people are not sovereign, that the gun is sovereign in this country. And that declaration of the gun being sovereign for me is an act of treason. It's an act of treason that cannot allow the president, who is in charge of these armed forces, to continue being in power. So the call that Ruto must go is not an idle call, and neither is it a call to anarchy, not an invitation of anarchy. An absence of Ruto does not stop this country, the institution of this country functioning. And there are mechanisms, even if Parliament has to go, the Chief Justice can preside for a period. We have, right now as we speak, the returning officers are there, the employees of IBC. Presiding officers are temporary appointees. The secretary is always that. you don't need IPC. Where you find that they have got the IBC chair as the returning officer for the presidential election is in an act of parliament which wrongly interprets Article 138, Clause 10, which simply says the chair will declare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I mean, there's a lot to mine in there, and before we even go further, I just want to start inviting members of the audience to start thinking about the questions or comments that you've got, because we're going to be coming to you shortly. Mark, you have some comments as well online?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's coming in online is quite a lot. And then I'll throw a question to Shefa just on the issue of whether there's a place or need to look for that leader for this and the cause moving forward, because it keeps changing. And is there a need for a particular cause to lead this particular movement? But we have unique. You say, if Ruto started this, of which I know he is, better he know how to finish it. Ole wake ikienda overboard. Kibali Group, you say 16th July 2024, he got no other option than to resign. Our decisions are constitutional. And Nimitra Martin, you say new line added to the Kenyan anthem. Ruto must go.
Oh my gosh.
That's what he says. That's what that person says. All talk about Ruto must go, so be it. Make your vote count 2027. Why advocate for anarchy? Not good for anyone. Leo Main says. And so there's that question of then what? If indeed you ask for Ruto must go, then what?
Actually, Snacks for Breakfast on YouTube also asks, what a name, first of all. Snacks for Breakfast. If Ruto goes, what next? I think this was a question to the entire panel, but we can ask it to you, Shefa.
And I think it's a fantastic question, but because I don't want to repeat myself a lot, because I feel like Okia has really mentioned what's next, right? And I think because we are in unprecedented, I really hate unprecedented times, because you're in unprecedented times, right? As people, as Kenyan citizens, as a country, and even our own constitution is in an unprecedented time, because I don't think the spirit of that constitution has been explored, expanded, and felt the way it has been felt over the last couple of weeks, right? So because of that, I am one of those people who is like, we need good governance. If the people who are governing us have said who they are, and like I'm tired of also over-analyzing and psychoanalyzing these people in leadership and going through the, are they listening to their advisors, whatever. I'm like, they're very clear what they want. And for the first time, the people are also very clear about what they want. And they're being guided by the laws of this land, right? And because they can't usurp that, they are trying to figure out a way to plant into us a spirit of fear of, oh my God, but if he goes, 2027, what happens between now and then? I'm like, if the constitution itself has gotten us to this point, it will get us through, right? And I don't think we have fully explored and fully lived, out the spirit of that constitution and the things that it has in it to protect this country. Because then we are all going to be like, oh my God, he's had us and now it's enough. And maybe we give some time. And if that time is not working, let's figure out another alternative. And I'm like, but the constitution always has alternatives, right? And to what you were saying about there are always people in the shadows lurking and, looking for ways to unplant whatever we are doing. Those people have always been there. I think it's just now that we are realizing how close to the front they are. When we are trying to build something beautiful and we're trying to reclaim ourselves as Kenyans, we're trying to reclaim our country for ourselves, that we realize that they also want to reclaim the Kenya they know, which no longer serves any of us, which no longer stands to hold within the constitution. For example, the conversation about Parliament should be dissolved because Parliament as is unconstitutional. It doesn't adhere to the two-third gender.
I'm hearing a lot of agreement in the audience.
Parliament should be dissolved. Like after the CSs went home, we should have just seen people being told, yo, bro, it's been good. Because we need, like if you're going to do right, let's do right. And not attempt or perform to listen to people and say, I've sent like my cabinet home, but then I'm keeping these people here for whatever reason. And we know that the institutions and the laws and the regulations and the articles within the spirit of the Constitution define who should be in office, right? So I don't want us to get stuck in the weeds of imagining that there is more darkness that we have, like more coming than we've already seen. It's already dark. What we need to be now is each other's light. And I think that's the thing that terrifies them. And because we are also the light that is informed, we are the light that's on the right side of history, we are the light that is working with the Constitution, and also we are the light that's very loud. And that's terrifying for anybody who's used to autocratic leadership who gets away with anything.
Well, okay. So we shall shed light or use that analogy to shed light on the questions and comments that members of the audience have. I want to stand up because I can't see who's behind me. I'm a Makutanisaidia.
Yeah, no, I know you're also part of, you have a security background. So you want to check on whether Goyi Odera has something aimed at you. But this is up to you now to ask question. Doesn't have to be a question. It could be a comment. Just shoot your hand up and someone from our team will hand over the mics to you.
Okay.
This is your opportunity. Comment or question. It could be to any one of the panelists or just directly just saying your point of view. You just say your name and your question. Or
Thank you very much. My name is Collins. I have a question and a comment. A few comments, actually. So there's something that John Allen said at some point. You asked what Ruto must go means to some of us. So to me...
Well, I asked what ALUTA CONTINUA means.
If you could, and watch your head, could you stand up so that we could capture you with the
I'm just saying, let me clarify, because there might be Subarus lurking somewhere.
They could come for me as well, you never know. So anyway, so there's a point you asked... okay. There's a point you asked.
Now it's my turn to turn. Okay.
What Ruto must go means and what ALUTA CONTINUA means to some of us. So for me, my first experience with a protest was when I was 2 years old. I used to live in Eastleigh with my parents. And during the things that the generation of Kibwana were rioting along the Juja Road, my house was right there. So while people were running out of the road to hide, some of them ran into our house. And my dad was clobbered because of that. Now, I was only 2 years old, but that was my memory of that time. I've never been to any protest, but this time I had to go, I think, in the first one before the Parliament incident and in the one during Parliament. Now, the reason I stood up is because my first time as a kid, my dad was beaten up for nothing. And now, that time before you could see the police beating people who are actually peaceful. So that is the reason, that is what that means for me. The struggle started when we were kids, and now we still have to go to the streets to tell police to do the job that's their work.
Are you the one to end the struggle? Is your generation the one to end the struggle?
I'm a millennial, so as she said, it's not a Gen Z thing, so I believe that this is our moment to take it all up. Now, when I say that, it doesn't mean that I'm Luanda Magere or I am Superman. The conviction, I feel it's like a spiritual call for us to stand up and fight for the Constitution. So it's not a physical battle. It's a battle of ideas. So to come to the meaning or my understanding of Ruto must go, there are two ways to look at it. He can literally step out of State House and leave. That is the literal way, just as our honorable leader said. But to me, what it means is a shift in ideology, because the arrogance has been choking. I personally voted for him. I loved him during that election cycle.
That's an incredibly brave thing to admit in this point in time. Incredibly.
I literally loved him.
Tumpigie makofi ama tumwambie pole.
So
Wanasema unakuja kanisani, wanasema pole. Okay.
I'm owning up to my sins. But anyway, if I didn't do that, we wouldn't be here. And I'm grateful that I did that because of that. But anyway, so what Ruto must go means to me is, if today he decides that guys have listened and I can see the Constitution is what you guys want, and from today I promise that we are going to do it, and he starts actually doing it, for example, by gazetting the firing of the ministers, which he hasn't done today. If he chooses to do what he's meant to do by the Constitution, then why would we be in the streets? If the police stop firing at people, why would we be in the streets? The police are our brothers. The police are our sisters. It shouldn't take Mercy or anyone else to say stop shooting people for them to stop shooting, because they're there for us. So it should get to a point where my kid, when I get one, can stand up and walk in the streets of Nairobi without fearing police. She should go up and take a photo with them. So that is the Kenya that I'm looking forward to, and that is what Ruto must go means to me. He doesn't have to step out of State House. His mindset could change. But if he cannot change his mindset, he should go, literally. Thank you.
Apigwe makofi, asipigwe makofi.
There's someone else.
Ask my question. Sorry for hogging the mic. So my question is, to the senator and anyone else who has a legal background. So you have a legal experience based on what I've learned from you. You're also a bit of my idol. So when it comes to accountability to the Constitution and all violations that happen, case in point, the Inspector General of Police and the person who the buck stops with, the president. So there are violations that have happened now, there are violations that have happened in the previous regime. Do we have provisions, or was there the thought in the spirit of the Constitution when it was being made during that time, to have these people stand trial here in Kenya before us? Because I don't see a place where even now, while the struggle is going on, we are saying we will file our evidence to ICC while we have working legal systems here. So is there in our Constitution provision to hold these people accountable, if not now, when they're out of power, for example?
Would you?
That's a very good question, good sir. And maybe if I can ask you to be a bit more detailed, are you looking to put the president or the Inspector General of Police or the institutions that they represent on trial, or the people themselves?
So for the Inspector General of Police, by the way, I want to thank everyone that has stood up during this period, because it got me to read the Constitution in 2 weeks. And it also got me to read the IPOA legislation or something, the police bylaws or something. So in the police thing, I learned that the police are guided to protect us, and at some point they're supposed to not use their firearms unless there's threat of danger to them. And if they do, they'll be held personally accountable and they should offer help. Now, my question, especially to the Inspector General of Police, for him, it's personal accountability. For the president, it's because the buck stops with him. So I don't know, I know we cannot hold the office accountable, but can he be held to account in his personal capacity as the holder of the office at a later date?
I assume when you say at a later date is after his presidency? Yes. Well, of course. I mean, as at now, the Constitution offers the president a wide blanket immunity from prosecution. And with regards to the IG, Inspector General, when you say Inspector, let me just put it this way, assuming that he was still in office, the interpretation of that particular excerpt that you've talked about is very wide and it's very dynamic, because when you say that a police officer can only use lethal force to protect himself or protect someone who is in danger from losing their lives or something of the sort, then it's up to the person who is taking the action to decide whether he or she feels threatened or not. If you go to court, for example, I saw a video of some plainclothes CID guy who was shooting tear gases like into protesters as he was entering a vehicle. It was a live bullet, was it? Oh, I thought it was a tear gas. Okay. Okay, fine. So he was shooting at people. I didn't know that. Now, okay, now. So if he was shooting at people as he was entering the vehicle, as someone, if I'm seated somewhere and I'm listening to a legal argument, if this gentleman comes to court and says, I felt that the people who are behind the vehicle were trying to liberate the people who are seated in the back of the car, then I can simply say, okay, he felt threatened. But there's also something which is called prima facie, like in the face of the law. Like, if it does, that's why the legal system in this country is a bit flawed. Because if I look at this is a situation where it's just one person seated, making a decision based on what how he or she interprets the Constitution. In my learned opinion, our system is flawed. Mm-hmm. Our system is very flawed. I think we should start looking at jury system, where we are judged by our peers. In the sense that if I'm a judge and someone has come and paid me off and said, get this guy off, if I put a ruling and say this guy is gone, he's gone. But if it's now a jury system where now it's the majority, where now you're being judged by your peers, if that gentleman who was shown on TV says that I felt threatened, if we're 12 of us and we have to make a decision, then I am sure logic will win the day, because there's no way you can say you were threatened. You are the only person with a gun there. Yeah, exactly. So, in answer to your question, can they be prosecuted? Yes, it'll be very difficult though, and that's the reason why the IG was let go. Because you see, at the end of the day, he, I think from what I heard, he was told, "I've accepted your resignation. Mm-hmm. It's just your signature that's missing." So in answer to your question, good sir, it's possible, but it's very difficult, and definitely not as currently constituted in the country at the moment. Yeah. You mentioned the ICC. I mean, you know how that went. So.
Okay, I want to seed a couple of thoughts in the audience as we get more questions. Yeah, as you're responding. Yeah. As you're responding, there's a question from someone online. It's called Mwirigi. And he's asking us, what do we want Kenya to look like on the 25th of June, 2025? Because, rightly, we've diagnosed what's wrong, right? What do we want to see put right? I think that's one of the questions that people are asking us to exercise our minds on, but you can respond first.
I'll answer the question first. Yeah. I want to be able to see the name of the country in the country. We are called a Republic of Kenya. We are not a kingdom. We are not a fiefdom. We are not a kiosk. We are a republic, a government of law. So if we can have that on 25th of June next year, we'll have achieved it. If we can just have a republic. Yeah. Then as regards the question he said, first of all, even that article which gives the president immunity, that's, I think Article 143, does not give him immunity to crimes against humanity. So he can be held accountable even in our courts for that. As for the police, if you go see the first standing orders, they're very, very clear on how to use firearms. And it was not used on that day. I never had the police announce that, hey, stop, or we shall open fire. There was none. Number two, when an operation goes out, you have the IG, you have the deputy IG, you have the Nairobi area commander. They're supposed to draw up a plan of operation. The streets must be cut into sections with unit commanders. And each unit commander has the duty to account for the bullets allocated to him through his men. and is supposed to institute investigations, inquiries, if there's any death. None of that has happened. We had people who were in those units and all that. If they were not there, then the IG takes the overall command responsibility. If they are there, then he can demonstrate that he issued proper command guidelines for containing the riot. The other thing, for some of us who have rioted all this time or went on demos, by the way, there's no police station I've not slept in Nairobi. I was sued 28 times and I won all the cases. But never, ever have I ever seen a civilian, a policeman in civilian, wielding a weapon. During riots, they must be uniformed if they are carrying weapons. What were people in civilian attire doing when police are containing a demonstration? There are very clear for standing orders. And these characters have been captured on camera. If the president is serious, we can pick each one of them and prosecute them. The commanders of the various sections of the street know who they were commanding. The armories know which bullets were issued to who. The serial numbers are taken. And they can act. If those bullets were not brought back, what report did the officer who did not bring back his bullets write? Or where that bullet went? This attempt to tell us that it's a confusion does not work. We are a country of law, and if we just follow it, we'll get whoever did what, and we'll know who did what. Even whoever shot that guy who was in Parliament who was saying, Mr. Speaker, sir, we can be able to get him. So all this attempt to make it that it's impossible, what has happened, we cannot have people accountable, is not there. The president must come out and produce the criminals. On 25th, after I had the president, I left my house at around 11. I went to the Mater Hospital. I found 2 people with rubber bullet wounds. They'd been injured from they had been fired at close quarters. I went to Bagadi. I found 40 people with bullet wounds. I went to Nairobi Hospital. I found 2 people. One was an MCA who had been injured, not with bullet wounds. I came to Kenyatta finally. I met 3 dead bodies. I found 15 people with bullet wounds to the head in the ICU. They just created some beds and put their ventilators and whatever, and some were even sharing ventilators. They could ventilate this fellow, they move him around, they begin ventilating. 15 of them were in critical conditions. In the wards, 148 had been admitted with bullet wounds. And they told me they discharged hundreds of others who were not life-threatening. That was a massacre. Mm-hmm. That was a massacre. There's no other definition. And that's something for which the president cannot escape prosecution.
No, hold on. Before you say that he can't escape prosecution, we heard him when he was being interviewed by Linus, Joe, and Eric say that, hey, my hands are tied. The police have their independence. They have their own budget. And therefore, that is a completely separate and independent institution. Why then?
I'll get to that.
Yeah.
Under Uhuru Kenyatta, the National Police Act was amended to remove the security of tenure of the Inspector General. Mm-hmm. And when the appointment process, the president now picks whoever he wants to be IG, whoever he wants to be Deputy IG, whoever he wants to be DCI. They pick. You saw me the other day. Left the other unit, he came to be, it became the DCI. So those amendments have placed responsibility, command responsibility of the force in the appointing authority. Because the mechanisms whereby people enjoyed security of tenure and therefore they could be responsible for their actions is no longer there. Number 2, when Ruto came in, there's a unit that had been developed over time. Forget about IPOA. IPOA are civilians, they don't understand anything police. There's a unit that was called Internal Affairs Unit. Very well equipped. This was a unit that was even trained to investigate murder where there's nobody. And they will pin down somebody. What did Ruto do and the Mutambe, Kome? They stopped funding that unit, other than just the salaries. The operations budget was cut. they transferred all the investigators into the outposts to do administrative work. Right now, there's no capacity to investigate what has happened. This was premeditated, that should the Kenyans ever stand up, we'll mow them down. And there will be no mechanisms for unearthing what has happened. So if we do reverse engineering, we will nail these people. And the Constitution does not protect anybody to breach the law. So they will be held. The only protection they'll have is that they will be given a fair trial.
Yeah.
But not that they cannot be tried. And our courts are able to the task. As for the ICC, I think the ICC, in terms of this order of courts, I understand, if it's a result of a treaty, you saw what the Supreme Court said about this African court? It's at the level of a magistracy. It's a subordinate court. The ICC is a subordinate court in the order of the Kenyan Constitution. So it is something we should not even be talking about. Let us just say that we hold these people accountable on the motherland, and we can do it.
John,
may I respond?
Really quick, though, because we have to also...
Yeah.
I'll allow you, sir. Duke. Duke of where, by the way? Go ahead, David.
Thank you. What I meant when I said the president has immunity, and when I was asking for clarification in terms of whether it's him or the institutions, it is because currently, as the justice system is constituted, the president can hide behind a myriad of institutions. And that's just the truth. Going up, because he can, if we go after him and say, oh, you did this, he can simply say, I didn't give the order. It is the IG who gave the order to the police to do this and that and blah, blah. I was seated in State House, I didn't say anything. I mean, it was done in my watch, of course, definitely. And being the leader and the president of the country, sure, I mean, why not? But if subjectivity is the death of reason. We have to use some objectivity a bit. I know we are all hurting and we are not in the best of scenarios with the current government.
Yeah.
But if we look at it from, call a spade, if we were to go after him as President Ruto, he can hide under so many blankets and executive orders, what, blah, blah, blah. I agree what Mr. Honorable Omtata said is true. It does not exempt him from crimes against humanity. But at the same time, he can circumnavigate the scenarios where if you go at him and say, look, so-and-so was shot in the streets, and this is what happened under your watch. He can say, I did not shoot him. The order to give live bullets was given by IG Koome and that and blah, blah, blah. That's what I meant. I just needed...
And a bit of it played out even in the ICC case, as we saw that. I have to bring in the church. My producer says we have to preach to the church. And let me call on someone I know personally. And before I ask him, Goey, it's your turn to speak, but to also speak on behalf of the church, Reverend Goey Odera. How many of you felt, by a show of hands, that the church stood up to be counted at the moment of reckoning? The 20th.
So the day after the moment of reckoning. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Go, there's a reason I did.
All right.
She has a hand up.
Yeah.
Rev speaks. Yes. The church leadership. Rev, if you may speak to that first, and you could give your comment or your question to follow.
You threw me under the bus, bro.
There you go.
So I'm going to speak. Let me just, for the record, the institution of the church, I do agree, has failed the country. It did fail in the sense that not just being a moral voice, but the institution that can actually champion a lot of the issues that we are talking about here. We failed to do that. And those that did have access to the powers that be, I think used it for personal benefit, for privilege. I think they were also taken because our man has won, then God is on our side. Now, I'll honestly tell you, I didn't vote for this president. And so there are some of my colleagues who had said that, and I was like, God is, so whose side am I on, in itself? So there was also that in itself. And so we were caught up in the play of having our man in State House. And I think that is where we were caught up with in losing sight, being on the side of the victor, but not being in the side of victims. Till today, the church has not pronounced itself on what's happened in Kware. Till today, the church has not officially come out and asked the government, to account for many of the atrocities that have happened in itself. And I speak specifically to those who have that access that the church does not necessarily have never had before for any presidency in itself. And so there we bear great responsibility. And in as much as we are being judged by this generation, and I think the judgment is just going to be more harsh for us before God in heaven. God have mercy. This is what I want to pronounce myself. When you say Ruto must go, it's not just the person Ruto, but who and what he represents. All right? So he might not go tomorrow or the day after, but what does he represent? He represents theft, corruption, criminality, anti-meritocracy. He represents arrogance. This is not service that he has. Injustice, political insecurity. I mean, I can try and look for the many Jaluo words I have to be able to do that. That's what he represents. And the people and the cabal around him. That's what I mean, Ruto must go. And it's not just in government. It's in the church, because there are people who do that. Just yesterday, a church, in knowing what the entire country thinks about, went and said, yes, we will accept that money that you are going to contribute. For what you said a week ago, no harambes, no contributions. Okay? And so that is what President Ruto represents. Even in private sector, Ruto must go. There's a certain thinking in the private sector that Ruto must go. Even in the media, there's something about it. I call it Rutoism. That's what needs to be purged. That's what I mean by saying Ruto must go. But then lastly, not to hog the mic in itself, I actually think moving forward, part of Ruto must go is based right there in Parliament, and it can happen. Ruto's hands aren't tied. I'd like to draw our attention to a pronouncement the Chief Justice made in September of 2020. He actually did, under the law, say that Article 261 has been breached by Parliament, and that is the 2/3 gender rule. Parliament had 5 years since 2010 to enact a law about the 2/3 gender rule, and each successive time it went to the courts, the high courts, Parliament walikuwa kichenga then. But before Maraga left, he pronounced that the Parliament is in breach of this and needs to be dissolved. Now that was on Parliament to the presidency. You can dissolve Parliament. So the president actually has that card in his hand. He can actually dissolve Parliament because of the 2/3 gender rule has not been implemented. He has the power to do. We don't need to recall Parliament right now. President Ruto can. And if he's watching, where's the camera? If he's watching, you have the power to do it. All right? The 2/3 gender rule has not been enacted, and you have the power to use that at your disposal.
Great. That interesting, very powerful thoughts from you, Pastor Goyo Dera. And I just wanted, if there's anybody else who has comments with regard to the role of the church, or perhaps some of the things that we've discussed now, it's time to put your hand up, and we can pass a microphone over here. And as we're discussing this, there's also the question of debt, right? So we've had this discussion for quite a bit of time, and that's also something that is on the horizon. If anybody has any thoughts around that question, we can do that. But please, you can stand over here, I believe, right? Or right where you are is fine. Yeah, and then you can just say your name, ask your question, or make your comment.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Jackie. God, I have so much to say, but I'll try not to hog the mic too much. But I think something to start with is There's a quote that says, "A leopard never changes its spots." And we keep having conversations around the character and the person of the president. But we know this, we know Ruto, like we know who he is and what he represents, as the pastor has said. Even just forget everything that happened before 2007 or in 2007. Let's come down to 2010. We had a constitution that was the most progressive in the continent, and he led the whole country to vote against it. So for us to sit here and think that now that he's the president and wields, as he reminded us on the 25th of June, that he wields all the instruments of power, right? That now is when he's going to come and respect that constitution, demand for accountability, demand for Chapter 6, for example, to be upheld. I think what this movement has showed me is that this guy is not going to change. He called for dialogue. Mark, you said it was supposed to start today. He went out and called us anarchists for protesting. He told the young people that they're being used to promote violence. If he took time to relate to what these young people are actually asking for, and I speak for a young person because I am 35 years old, he would realize that we are so learned. We are not the goons that they have hired year in, year out that are on the streets today. Guys are walking around the streets with a constitution. There was a video of the guy who was arrested by the cops, and he told the cops, "Have you read this document?" And they let him go. That's who Ruto is dealing with. But in his mind and in the political class's mind, they think they are dealing with the goons they are used to hiring. And I think, just to answer the question by Mwirigi, I think what we want for Kenya, the running theme for me throughout this whole protest has been a demand for accountability at all levels. Parliament is the one institution that honestly ought to protect the principle of accountability in this country. For me, the camel that broke my back, the straw that broke my back as a camel, so to speak, was when Linturi, the committee let Linturi go. I remember I woke up that day and the first thing I reached out for was a constitution right by my bedside. Because I was like, how the hell can we recall these people? Because I'm like, how can the majority of parliament decide that this, and we all know our parents are farmers, right? We know they've been affected by the fake fertilizer scandal. And then a committee of 16, 18 people decides that Kenyans can suffer. Oh, come on, we cannot live like this anymore. So for me, I think what this government and the political class generally needs to realize is that this movement is pushing for accountability. We want good governance. We don't care who delivers it to us, okay? What's his name? Eric Omondi joked and said Mama Mboga should be appointed to the next cabinet. Heck, if they're qualified, so be it. Like, we really don't care. We just want service delivery, accountability, and good governance. And we want an end to corruption. The lives that have been lost in the last 2 weeks and the abductions. I mean, we had a lady who was abducted with her child. Are we serious as a country? We want to have dialogue, and the people who are standing there are all men. Where are the women in this conversation? Where are the young people in this conversation? As in, come on, man, they need to stop cutting us pumpkins. Yeah. I mean,
Ungesema tu na Kiswahili ingeingia vizuri.
Yeah, it needs that. Yeah, but I think truly, and I think the interview by Eric, Joe and Linus, as he's being called, the one thing that I took out of that interview is how tone deaf the entire leadership of this country is. And it's not about Ruto. And that's what he fails to realize. This is not a personal attack on him. It is and that because he hoodwinked a few people during the elections into separating him from Uhuru, the majority, I mean, he lost by 233,000 votes. The other 7 million people, they know he was part of Uhuru's government. So everything that he keeps blaming on Uhuru, we know he was part of it. Eurobond ya Kwanza, he was still in government. He was the deputy. SGR, they were still there with Kinadwale. So they can't come and tell us now at we've changed our minds. We don't want that. Go home, and if you can't fix the country, just go home.
Okay.
There are people who are willing to do it.
Kabisa. Okay, thank you very much.
Naona pia tuko na prof hapa. And he's been wanting to say something. Watu wanasema uzungumze.
Yes.
Tafadhali. Asante sana also for joining us on this. Professor Kibuta Kibwana, ladies and gentlemen.
My name is Kibuda Kibwana, and nimekuja kudoea mkutano wa Gen Z.
No, ni vizuri nini mwanasiasa kubali amekuja kudoea. Yeah, he's here to listen. But anyway, let's listen to you.
You know, for me, I think what is happening in our country is very historic. When one compares it with Mau Mau of the 50s, what happened in, you know, the 90s when we were looking for the Katiba, NCC, and now this movement. And actually speaking, well, strictly speaking, one can say its power is actually like the power of Mau Mau. It is unprecedented because they are not using guns. They are using their minds. They are using social media. And they can have meetings of like 100,000 or even more, even meetings that politicians can't have physically. And the level of patriotism that I have seen, people who have appropriated even the Kenyan flag, and they're saying, we are coming in peace. And they repeat, we are coming in peace. And then they are met with violence. So even as it is said that it is an amorphous movement, you can't identify the leaders. What happened for Black Lives Matter? You couldn't identify any leaders, and it shook America. So this is something new, where people crowdsource ideas, you know, they work in such a manner. So somebody said the Katiba is I think it was Mwangi, the Katiba is the leader. An idea can be a leader, a vision can be a leader. And there can be, you know, leadership of many people together. In actual fact, in NCC, we began by trying that. We were saying that we are not recognizing any particular person as the leader. And we worked for a long time. And of course, those days, we worked with politicians and the opposition. And at some point, they felt that we were becoming very strong as civil society. So they went to MOI, IPPG. So that is one important thing for this movement to be careful about, because sometimes when the politicians think that another group is very powerful, they kind of ditch it. And then they gang together and they say, we have to, you know, protect ourselves. That is an issue. Then I also think that it's important to ask yourself, what are the victories? If it is a victory, for example, about the Finance Act, which has been kind of suspended, but then you look at the budget, because already the president has given an alternative budget, or they have said that this is, now it's actually in Parliament. This is what now will be discussed. But it is important for the Gen Zs, for this movement to say, wait a minute, there hasn't been public participation on this. We really want to now say, if it's salaries to be slashed, if it is what, now that will be the real victory. If it is ABC, the panel about the political parties will source 5 out of 9. And of course, if they speak to the religious sector, and then the religious sector accepts that they can also support the political people, then that's 7 out of 9. So the IBC, which will be put into place, still will not be the independent IBC that is required. So one thing like we used to do, we were very particular about what are our demands, and actually what became minimum reforms, what became a lot of things in the Constitution. We were very particular to say that we nail, you know, we nail whatever has been agreed. Even the law to make the Constitution, we would say we must nail it. So this is an extremely powerful movement. And in my view, if this movement does not produce the change that is required for our country, then I think next time they will be so frustrated, young people, they will say that, you know, these people don't care, so we have to change our country by any means necessary. And of course, previously we saw the Mombasa Republican, we saw the Sabaot, we saw Mungiki, we saw that kind of stuff. So leadership in this country, the political leadership, must see this as an opportunity to change our country in peace, because these young people are coming in peace. And let me just, I think there was a point made about the spirit of the Constitution, and we have to be very careful about, okay, if Ruto goes, Ruto must go, and I think there was an expansion of what that means. But then we have to really ask ourselves, for example, if, and I'm not saying that that is not legitimate, because, you know, I came to Kudoya, and what the Gen Zs say, that is what will happen. But we need to ask ourselves, suppose Senator Omtata, a man of a lot of courage, conviction, and so on, if the technical people, the secretariat, was also prevailed upon, and they said we can't work without the commission, you know, then the solution that Mutata is saying is a good solution might be aborted. So one, also we have to ask ourselves, suppose that was to happen and they said we can't work without, because they were appointed by this system, we can't work without the 9 people. Then you have to ask yourselves, what do we do? And that is where the point came about about us thinking broadly, so that if that is the solution, then we have to say, how do you midwife it so that, you know, somebody else doesn't say it's not correct? And of course, Parliament has been extremely dishonorable, particularly the National Assembly, and there is the impeachment, the recall, which now from next month can happen, but we still therefore have to face that possible solution because the IEBC cannot come into being without Parliament midwifing it according to the Constitution. So then one and even the budget, unless those things can be postponed, but of course we want the ABC thing, and that's why when the president is hesitant about making it happen, he knows it's a trump card that he has. So I think it is the complexity of those issues, so that yes, whatever results we want, we must get, the agencies must get them, and we navigate in such a way that the constitutional situation, the legal situation, or whatever situation cannot, we don't have a problem there. And finally, anybody who would have looked at what was happening in our country could have seen that these many young people, they are not going to wait forever. The high cost of living, the unemployment, even the laws that were made, like the National Youth Council Act, so that there can be representation of young people from the sublocation. All those things, the people said, these people are very powerful. If we allow them to organize, then they can take over. You know, even when the young people are saying, don't talk about this Gaza thing. Those people, they are suffering. Don't get yourself there. Don't get yourself to that Ukraine thing. Don't, you know, I think it was all there, written for us to see. And so that's why I'm saying, and kind of pleading that let us, for example, how can they, and it was mentioned, how can there be a dialogue if even today people are being abducted? Because unless there is confusion, and there is confusion, because even before any dialogue in any of these political things, there are preliminaries. It is agreed. You know, if things were done which are wrong, and they have been done which are wrong, this must be corrected. And these are the rules of it. And I don't think you can have a dialogue for 1 week. I mean, they have had, you know, all those dialogues before, and they have taken a long time, and the results are not evident. So I think I have talked long, and ni mtu wa kudoea nisiambiwe wewe umekuja kudoea na unataka kila chakula. Asante.
Asante sana. Thank you very much, Prof. There's some comments here. Oh, Mercy, you had something to say?
Yes, thank you. Senator Okia has asked a really good question that I think everyone should ask themselves, and I'm going to add on to that question. What was a policeman in civilian doing on the streets shooting at protesters using live bullets? Number one. Two, what was what was a Ugandan police doing in the streets of Nairobi? We have seen, if you look at X, you will see the expose of this particular guy with a gun shooting at protesters, and it's not tear gas canisters, it's a pistol, and he's shooting at people. And you asked senators whether this is the same person who you asked about Ruto and he said that the police service is an independent body. Is this the same man that we want to believe? The man who, when told about the shooting of a 12-year-old, asked, he's alive, right? Is this the same person who knew about the fake fertilizer scandal? And I would like to remind us that before that fake fertilizer scandal, 11 months ago, there was bad seeds scandal. So there's farmers in Baringo who planted maize, and instead of harvesting maize, they harvested cobs. Is this the same man that we want to trust and listen to and believe when actually it is really true that a cheetah never changes its spots? My dream for Kenya, and I asked this question during the Mashujaa concert. I asked everyone. There's no person who said, I want to be in power, I want to be the president, I want to be the next senator. No one said that. In fact, there's someone who answered that really profoundly, and it is something I would never have thought of in my entire life. He said, I want every boarding school in Kenya to have hot showers. Can you imagine that? And he said that the reason why he thinks boarding schools should have hot showers is because that would show that the country cares about even the little things. And he went on to say, which I totally agree with, that cold showers do not develop character. I think all of us can agree on that, right? There's someone who has asked to, it's just, okay, Amerix does not agree with that, which is his opinion, but we will come back to that. Someone has asked, by June 2025, where do we want to see our country? And I would start with the people that have been appointed or will be appointed to be CSS. They should have meritocracy. Like, they should have the basic merits just as a standard unit to be in that position. So, meritocracy. Someone who has the merits to be there will know the policies that are needed or that should be implemented in that ministry to work for them. Lastly, upholding the rule of law. Our constitution is for us. Our constitution is our leader. People who have corruption cases, people who have embezzlement and fraud cases in courts, we could start with them, that they step down or they get thrown out. Then people who uphold the rule of law, people who have integrity, people who are accountable, people who will bring good governance, we could start with them, get them into positions of leadership, not into positions of power, positions of, actually, instead of leadership, positions of service, because it is public service. These people are there to serve us, right? So we could start with that.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mercy. Oh yes, rounds of applause. Yeah. Look, there's something that you've touched on that I'm hoping that we can get into the later and last phases of this conversation tonight. Obviously, this is something that everybody is talking about. The entire country is having this kind of moment, right, with you. And it's really a question of reimagining. Every one of us here has their own little imagination of what their slice of Kenya looks like, right? And I'm hoping that, as we're coming towards the end, that we really, put that speak that out into the world, and let's all sort of imagine together what exactly is it that we want to see. The same way, was it a young man or a young girl who talked about hot showers, Mercy?
It was actually Eric Wainaina.
Eric Wainaina.
Yes,
Interesting.
that was him. Yes, he's the one who said that.
No,
yes.
that's it's not a young man.
It was
Yes, but it's relative. Maybe it's in the mind. Na kiroho pia ni kijana, si ndio? I think there was someone behind you, Shefa. Yeah, go ahead.
So my name is Wanjiru Nguhe. I work at Fumbua, which is a mis and disinformation, program. We're against mis and disinformation. And my comment is about the the quality of propaganda that we're seeing the government, using against the citizens. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to commend every single Kenyan who has come across mis and disinformation and debunked it, or fact-check it, or done a scientific analysis of why it is wrong. We really, really commend you. Thank you so much. It means that we, the people, are also fact-checkers, and we're also against being carried pumpkin. So the thing I really want to say about the propaganda that we're seeing, of course, propaganda is it says something about the people who have sponsored it, or the people who are imagining, or the people who are curating it. And it tells us exactly what they think about the Kenyan population. The kind of Cobra's Code things we are seeing, and I say Cobra's Code because it's the,
that might hurt some people who are jobless right now. Nasema tu, I'm just saying.
I take it. But the kind of propaganda we are seeing, it tells us a lot about the perception that these people have of the people of Kenya.
Yeah.
They have a really terrible perception of they think of us as unthinking, unseeing, unfeeling, unresponsive citizenry. And the one thing I'd like to say, and I don't even think I should say this, is that if you're going to lie to people, first of all, understand who you're lying to and respect us a little bit. Kenya yastahili heshima. And so we want to be respected. Even in the propaganda, please just work hard. Don't give us vampire tales. And also another thing is that your response to the death of people cannot be propaganda. Your response to more than 40, 50 bodies found in the river cannot be propaganda. Let's be a bit serious. Let's honestly be a bit serious. It's all jokes and games, but people have actually died, and it cannot be propaganda. We are in an actual crisis. It cannot be about propaganda. And worse, it cannot be about cheap, unthought, half-baked propaganda. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ifikie ule mtu, ifikie the people who are co-creating this thing.
Yeah.
Ifikie wale watu wamejifunga kwa cyber cafe.
Before the next comment, there's really a question of propaganda and clearing the air. That's reminded me of Wanjiru, and I want to just go quickly to you, Senator Omtata. There right now is quite a bit of commentary around the conflict of interest bill, and people want to know: Did you assent to it? Are you in support of it? If so, why? If not, why not?
Yeah, that's an interesting. I've seen some. Is it a tweet or whatever? I saw it by Oguda.
By Gabriel Oguda, yes.
Having my signature, having cut some signature part of a bill. Yeah? I think it's the total lack of knowledge of how a bill is processed. What happened in Parliament? We got this bill from the National Assembly. I sit in the Justice, Legal Affairs, and Human Rights Committee. So the bill came from the National Assembly. It was committed to my committee. We put out an advert for public participation. And we got quite a number of institutions and people responding. And we distilled the responses. And we came up with amendments to the bill, most of which, and I think all of which were to strengthen the bill. Then we made our report as a committee, upon which some of us signed. Some were not around, some were online, so they just voted by endorsing it online. All of us signed for it. It was taken to Parliament for a second reading. Then, during the second reading, where the bill is read through and through, members of Parliament also have an opportunity to comment on the bill. And so at that point, a motion for amendment was moved by Olekina, bringing in a complete new raft of amendments, which were not the amendments I had signed on. So that is a very important distinction. I signed on a report of a committee carrying recommendations from the Kenya law reform, all these parties. And I think I'm going to post that report online so that people can distinguish. Then, on the floor of Parliament, when we were at the committee of the whole House, people made suggestions to amend. Unfortunately, on that day, I was out in Busia. I think I was attending, I've sued my governor for refusing me access to information. So I was in court in Busia, I think, or somewhere. So I was not in Parliament on the effective day when our report was tabled and then amendments to the bill were proposed. So Senator Lekina proposed amendments which were carried alongside what we had amended. So what has vexed people are these amendments that came from private members, some of which are not bad in the extent that there was mischief also being played through the conflict of interest bill, whereby other laws were being amended through this particular law. And I've personally gone to court. I went to court in 2018, and I stopped a similar attempt to amend the EMCA, the Environmental Management Act, Environmental Management, Conservation Act, through the Torture Act. What was being debated was the Torture Act, but then they were amending the Environment Act. It was being sneaked in. So the argument some of the MPs who proposed the amendments were that these particular amendments, one, some were already in other laws. Two, they need to come as standalone bill so that when interrogating the amendment, the parent law is also looked at. And that's the logic of what I've been told what happened on that day. And that's what informed the various amendments, whereby some proposals were rejected to that extent. But in terms of my signature, which I've seen a good circulating, he really does not understand that a report of a committee, which members sign on, that the report of that committee that we signed on did not contain the contentious amendments that people are complaining about.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, our amendments were largely by institutions of governments, like Human Rights Commission and all those kind of things, clarifying this and that and the other. But the amendments Lekina brought in, which I've asked him, and he told him we were supposed to achieve two things. One, there was duplication, and two, the use of the Torture Act as an omnibus amendment, and I named the Torture Amendment Act as an omnibus amendment act to amend other laws, instead of coming up with a miscellaneous amendment act that would carry all these laws, so that all the parent laws could be subjected to whatever you call it, could be subjected to public participation and proper consideration.
Okay, I have
I was not in Parliament when the particular amendments were made. The document of Oguda is circulating is not correct, because that was a signature to a report. If you want to know how people voted on the bill, then you need to get the Hansard of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll clearly see that I was not in Parliament, and you'll see people who voted.
Okay, I have a yes or no question. Does the current bill with its amendments allow for members of Parliament, members of government to do business with government?
I think the issue was that what I've seen in the bill is not as simplistic as that. There was an amendment to relationship. Like, if I happen to be a friend and you work in government, irrespective of the department, would that be a conflict of interest if I get into business in government?
Mm-hmm.
Those are some of the questions that were coming in. So there were matters of due process. And the good thing is that the bill has not been finalized, because when the Senate introduces amendments to a bill that has come from the National Assembly, or the National Assembly introduces amendments to a bill from the Senate, it goes to a mediation committee. So we are going to appoint 9 people from the Senate, and the National Assembly will appoint 9 people from the Senate.
Okay.
And they will sit down again and relook at these various provisions.
Okay.
But what I've told you about Ladema's amendments that have brought all this storm is that I asked him what was it that was debated. Well, I also began reading it on social media, and I asked him what is it that was brought on the floor of the House that has brought this a kind of storm. And what I've given you is this explanation that you wanted to achieve two things. One, to tidy up the process of lawmaking by rejecting amendments through the back door. And two, he wanted also to avoid the duplication whereby a provision in another law is again found in another law and it brings conflict.
Okay.
So that's why he proposed the amendment to remove whatever was removed with a rider that they should bring a special bill that will carry all these laws that want to be amended in the area of corruption to achieve that goal. So
okay.
That's what it, but I'm thinking I want to go and post the bill because I've not seen anybody circulating the bill. I've seen debate on the bill.
Yeah.
I've not seen anybody circulating the bill. Now that Mr. Oguda has circulated my signature, I'm constrained to get the entire report put out on social media, and I hope people will read and see what was in that social report. And I also want to circulate the report of the committee of the Senate, because what happens is that when you're making legislation, once the proposals come, we have got experts, lawyers, economists, or whatever, who go and look at the bill and then make a report based on also what you have received from the public. And then they go through them, sift them and see, and then run them against the Constitution. In fact, one of the main things that the people had a problem with what came from the National Assembly was that a lot of what we changed at the committee was conflict with the Constitution, which would basically mean that it would go to court and it would be thrown out. Okay. May have been popular, but it was in conflict with the Constitution, like a fair hearing. There are things you cannot interfere with, and you cannot deny somebody a fair hearing on the basis of what you are suspecting the person to have done. So there was that element that went through the committee. But I think the best thing is to get people to read through. I'm even seeing that even the anger with the finance bill, for somebody like me, at the first time I fought the finance bill was 2018. We used to have what they called the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act, whereby the finance bill became law the day the minister read it. Mm-hmm. I'm the one who went to court and said, you cannot tax people without representation. And in my petition number 285 of 2018, I got orders quashing that law that allowed the finance bill to become automatic law, and also quashing the order that had effected that. And for those who are old enough, you remember there was a time when around the budget time, things could disappear from the shops. Mm. Then, after the budget is read, they would come back with the new prices. It's because the finance bill used to be implemented automatically. So the executive would tax you without your voice. I went to court in 2018, I fought the system, and I won. And I destroyed that law, so the finance bill began being debated. I moved on and began fighting. Even last year, it was a one-man war fight against the finance bill. One of the things I've been demanding is that you look at theft in terms of expenditure. The real theft happens on the revenue side. Mm. The law is very clear. The budget should give us estimates of revenue and estimates of expenditure. When you say you are raising the price on petroleum, the VAT on petroleum, from 8% to 16%, what is the anticipated revenue? And can that be put in law? And is that enough to finance the budget? So that we are in a situation whereby the government is raising money we don't know. Even domestic debts. We don't have a single domestic debt that has been acquired from 2010 that is valid, because it says it must be in the budget. You must propose your expenditure in the budget. Then Parliament has to approve what you want to do, so that what you then go to take on the money from the people is something that is tangible. Yeah. So these are the things that now, if you look at now, even the victory that people are celebrating, the Appropriation Act was enacted into law. The question we should be asking ourselves, with the rejection of the mechanisms for financing that budget, can the Appropriations Act still be law? Or do we need to go back and do what is really the proper thing, begin the budget cycle afresh? Okay. And finally, this year I also went to court in May. Just that the judges, I think, were a bit disturbed. I went to court in May, and I asked a very critical question. Can you pass the Finance Act before you pass the Appropriation Act, the budget? What are you financing? It's the budget. So where is the budget you want to finance? What was happening was very simple. President Ruto was now reaching a point whereby he was saying he does not need a budget. He does not need parliament to run this country. He was going to collect money, put in his pocket, and do what he wants with it. So that challenge was there. So we need to look critically at our budgeting cycle and ensure that the scamming that is causing poverty in this country, whereby there's absolute that point of understanding that the Finance Act is nothing but a mechanism of raising money to finance our budget. The problem is in the budget. What are we budgeting for? Why can't we balance our budget? What are we budgeting for? Why can't we balance our budget? When we get there, then right now what I see, when I look at people on the street, when I was hearing people shouting, it's like somebody looking through the keyhole and getting mad at what they see. I want that person to go to the balcony and see the mess, and then get properly mad and say, after being mad, we are going to proceed in this kind of sequencing.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's how I personally look at it.
Thank you. Mark.
Sorry, I was looking, I was a bit distracted. There was a bouquet of flowers, and I wanted to hand over to Mr. Okiya Omtata. You know how they say give a man flowers while they're alive? Just to appreciate. No. Senator, you have to be appreciated for what you've done. But
I want to say something. When I had an accident, and people saw the kind of cars I drive small cars because of my pocket. When I had somebody talking of Subaru, see, I've got a Subaru. So when you say don't think it's the cops. So, when I had that accident, I was condemned for driving a small car, yet I'm a senator. Not a single tweet even from the Gen Zs praised me for being sensible enough to live within my means. Everybody said, how can a senator be driving a Nissan whatever? Small Nissan car. They don't even see that even if I was driving the latest state-of-the-art vehicle, and that trailer, which was coming full of petrol, had lost control, would smash me to chapatis. Just that by the grace of God, it missed me and it collapsed, it crashed. So I also wonder that even those people who are complaining, when given an opportunity, would they be younger hyenas which can eat more than the old hyenas?
I mean, these
are the real questions you have to check.
Look, it's a great question, and perhaps a question that we will ask over the course of this discourse between ourselves and government. It's a good one.
But
it's a good
some
one.
people began fundraising for me, and I've not seen that many ways. They were fundraising to buy me a car. So I don't know how much they fundraise, and I would really be willing to receive that car.
Thank you, Omtata. Okay, Mark, do we have any more comments from the audience?
Actually, the flowers that I was going to give were actually Schaefer's. She would have allowed me. But Schaefer, I want us to, as we kind of wind up, because we're getting close to 9 o'clock. And first of all, let's appreciate Senator Okiya Omtata for what he's done over the years. And please, wale ambao walianza fundraiser, mfikishieni funds tafadhali, Senator, aende vizuri. But Schaefer, as a governance expert, policy, what's your irreducible minimum for not just this government, moving forward for this country?
Wow. I'm just thinking. I have so many. I think the first one and the first one ideally for me for this country is to remember who we are, without a doubt, because it is us forgetting and it is us assuming that we are not the people we think we are that got us to many, many, many negotiations with the political elite, and them assuming that they were better than us, and them assuming that they knew how to get away with murder, literally, things, plunder, theft, corruption, all of that. So that's my first irreducible minimum to the people of this country. Never forget who you are and what you are to this country. Like you saw the people in the streets for the first time in a magnitude that my heart literally was stopping, because you are beautiful in the chaos. And I don't think we sit and just kind of take that in and feel like we are incredible, because we are, right? So let us not forget who we are. And we are exactly the people who birthed this constitution, and we are the people who will make sure that every article and every line of that constitution is implemented, right? So that's one for the people of this country. For the leadership of this country, my first one is stop imagining you're smarter than us as an irreducible minimum. Like, just stop imagining that. We are the people who come, we know the law, we know international law, we will speak English, we'll speak multiple languages. We saw civic rise, everybody coming on board and saying, listen, we are going to translate this finance bill so everybody who doesn't understand English, we can take this to our people, right? So the first thing is, please don't think you are smarter than us. You're not, right? The other irreducible minimum is I completely refuse to accept willful ignorance, which we have seen in this government as a strategy, as a tactic, as a policy, mechanism, as an advocacy, as a comms. And what I mean by willful ignorance is this whole thing where government behaves like they don't know what's happening. Right? They only know what's happening when it comes to money. They only know what's happening when it comes to them losing their power, them being deplatformed, them losing their credibility. Then they know what's going on. But when Kenyans say, hey, KNH doesn't have enough doctors, KNH doesn't have running water, doctors are in the streets, they really don't know what's happening. When we are saying there are bodies lying now in morgues who have no names but are Kenyans first, right? Before we know who they are, they now don't know what's happening. They're now investigating. And we've seen this before, right? Where if somebody who has money and a title and class and, sometimes even if you're beautiful, you are taken care of, right? And people will come and find ways to make things work for you. What about the rest of us, So there's that. There's the level of willful ignorance that is used in this country as a way, as a mechanism of governance that is completely unacceptable. And we are not taking that anymore. And it goes into the whole thing of how they plunder. It goes into the whole thing of when they ask questions, now they really don't have the answers. Now it's, the police is now independent. When you ask who signed this, then now we don't really know, because, you have to talk to your MPs. Your MPs will be there saying, we serve our people. But then also the state, I'm like, stop that bullshit, because nobody's buying it anymore, The third irreducible minimum is nobody else should die in this country if we claim to have a leadership or a governance system that is abiding by the 2010 Constitution of this republic. It is impossible to imagine that there was even a dialogue to start today, I guess, because the people who should have been in that room dialoguing are in graves, right? They're the bodies that are cold. They're the bodies that are still missing. They're the people we can't account for. Those are the people who should be in that room dialoguing. So I'm not sure what people like us, right, are supposed to say when the demands are very clear, and the demands have always been clear. Kenyans want a country where they are Kenyans, and because you're a Kenyan, it's enough. You don't have to be a Kenyan Kikuyu, a Kenyan Luo, a Kenyan Kalenjin, a Kenyan Kamba. You just have to be a Kenyan for the fucking systems to work. How hard is that to understand, right? So those are my irreducible minimums. The other thing is, please, and I want to tell this to the generation that came and joined us in the struggle, as somebody who's proud, is that profanity is the language of the free. Profanity is the language of the free. And I mean this to say, everybody else who has been cussing a leader on a platform elsewhere, continue. I tell you this because whenever we ask for respectability politics, whenever we are asking for decorum, for people to behave well, for people to understand the elders are in the room, that is when the autocracy begins. So profanity is the language of the free. So speak freely, call them out, call them what they are, because they are thieves, they are murderers, they are rapists, they are plunderers, they are illegal in the offices that they hold.
Thank you. On that profane note, I'd like to bring you in, Darius. I mean, you sat and listened silently for most of this conversation. But, you know, by way of final thoughts, what to you, as a person who's looked at the history of this country from even before it was called Kenya, what to you is a thing that you desire most about what should come next?
Just getting started, let me read for you something here. Just an excerpt of a paragraph. It says, on the brink of great and widespread violence, people begin to turn back. There is a shared recognition that something must change, but the violence is not the way forward. Religious leaders take the lead. They help to force the government to convene a negotiating forum where all stakeholders are represented. A neutral, respected outsider is asked to help. He or she chairs the forum, helping everyone to reach a resolution that pacifies all the parties. Does that sound familiar?
Very familiar. It sounds like conflicts that I used to have at home. And anyway, I'm joking. No, obviously it sounds familiar, and not to be trite or to be, you know, insincere to this moment. This is something that we've been through before as a country.
Yeah. Surprisingly, this was a document written about Kenya in 1999. Yeah. So we've been here before with these, basically these political players. What has happened is that, excuse me, over the last 60, 70 years, this country has been governed by what you call elite convergence. Elite convergence is where, when their interests are threatened, they coalesce around each other. They gather, you know, they hunt in packs. What I like about this moment is that elite convergence has collapsed. You know, they've tried it, everything written here, which was actually written in 1999. It's an old rule book that has refused to work, which means we're dealing with a new country. We are dealing with a whole new dispensation. We are dealing with a new Kenya, where in real time we are seeing a whole new scenarios, a whole new logics in terms of education, in terms of, you know, our public life, our civic participation, in terms of what we demand from the country. So this is beyond who sits on the Esprit. There's a whole new country that started emerging in 2007, where the old logics of how that, you know, they've handled this system has worked. But there's something, and I've mentioned it before, it's called the problem with lagging indicators, where a new reality comes into place, but the old system still has language, it has institutions, it has, you know, resources. But then what you are seeing is the end of that reality. And I don't know what the new reality looks like. I don't believe there are particular solutions, but there are particular scenarios that will emerge in the coming decades. And for me, it's an amazing opportunity to see moments and, you know, circumstance and reality force these elites to begin to make concessions and acquisitions that in previous times came with a far higher cost. Not that we haven't paid a cost now, and it still has a significant, we've lost 40 lives, about 600 people were arrested. We paid, you know, quite a huge price for this. But watching the state and how it was formed 130 years ago begin to self-conclude, and watch these new emerging models of seeing and viewing ourselves and the civic public and the state, for me, is amazing. But particularly for the public finance aspects, there is going to be need for that public debt audit. Because given the kind of concessions the president has made, there's significant debt management that you're going to have to do, which of course affects households, people, you know, people's jobs, people's incomes, people's budgets. And so if not for anything, then the mechanisms and structures of setting up, you know, all the appropriations in aid and the finance bill and the budgets around it, we'll have to see to this and realize that the old order is gone.
Darius, can Kenya, in very simple terms, say, hey, to the IMF, to China, to all of the people that we owe, tunafanya stock taking, just wait, hold on with all of the repayments until we are done Because that's, I think, what the fear is. As we are looking at our debt, they're still in our pockets. So can that happen?
Definitely, and as Honorable Ki has mentioned, we need to start balancing our budgets again. We need to get our house in order. You cannot say you want to borrow 980 billion for this financial year. What's that money for? Where is that money going? We're talking about losing 63 billion shillings to Aror and Kimorer. TVET's budget this year is 30.7 billion. That's half. You can literally fund twice as many TVETs. I mean, we're joking. And in many ways, this is an opportunity to face the fact that we need to balance our budgets, we need to get our house in order, we need to, get the resources back on the streets and get, including the system, not just the national government, but the particular parastatals and the devolved units to be held accountable and to clean up their books.
Thank you. Thank you,
Darius. I'd like to bring something. Yeah, please. Appreciate Darius. He sounds like he'll be advising the future government of this country, as he already is. You've quoted something from 1999 about this country, or someone who sits in the same position in terms of expertise and calls himself an economist, David Ndii. He quoted something as well and said, majority of youth have no problem amassing wealth through evading tax evasion and corruption as long as they do not get prosecuted, a new report has revealed. Now, quoting about this report, he says, this survey was conducted 8 years ago. My bet is nothing has changed. Gen Z may claim to be tribalist, but on matters corruption, our political class is a reflection of society, Gen Z included. Engendering a culture of accountability will take more than venting thoughtless anger. From economist to economist, what would you say? Hold on, let me just give him a mic again. I want him to be on record on that. That one was off, please. It must be heard. So yes, on that article he quotes about Gen Z.
Yeah, I mean, he did that. He quoted a report from 8 years ago. I myself did one 3 months ago on the same issue, and the results are completely different. So he needs to update his data.
Do you see what I said about they are not smarter than us?
He's the same man who called us. He's the same man who said online activism is just wanking. So how can we believe anything that he says? I mean, we have seen what online activism has done.
Can I play devil's advocate for a moment here and just be completely conspiratorial and ask, what if, and again, I'm just playing, let's play Imagine here. Yeah? All right. What if David Ndii was actually the agent provocateur that was sent from amongst the masses into government to annoy people to get to this point?
Was that the best?
The profanity is overwhelming me on this side with this. Okay. He's done it, huh? Okay. Anyway, now that's completely aside. But I mean, Darius, we'd love to look at your report. The comments here are really stellar when it comes to what we need to do in terms of balancing our budgets.
Let me break protocol, John.
Okay.
There's a young man there who looks like a Gen Z. He had raised his hand a few minutes ago.
Yes.
Sir.
And then after him, there's someone here who wants to comment here.
Sitaki kusalimiwa kesho kwa sababu sikukupea mic. You could say your name, whether you are Gen Z or you just have a baby face, and go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Bon Sevic. I'm 22 years old. So one thing that I've been sitting here and listening to you, and when I'd sat down here, I'd feel like heat coming from my toes to my head. Because one time, it was 3 months ago, I was admitted at Kenyatta Hospital for sickle cell disease. And I remember after I was discharged, I was to go back for an appointment to take other medication which had ended by that time. And I remember when I go to the hospital and I gave the NHIF cover, I was told that this cover can't work for people unless you're working in the civil servant. And I was asked if my mom or my dad works for the civil servant. So that's one thing that annoyed me. And again, on June 19th was World Sickle Cell Day. And I was hoping that maybe the government or the Ministry of Health will do something like to create awareness for sickle cell disease or conduct tests to to find out people living with sickle cell disease and get them tested. But none of this happened. So I was asking myself then, what's the work of the Ministry of Health? Yeah, that's all.
Thank you for that question.
There's a comment here. Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Nepurko. I've been saving my voice for the last 4 days, so if it disappears, please bear with me. For me, the thing about what's happening in Kenya right now is just a manifestation of a youth, a population, a country, a republic, a collective of people realizing that they deserve better. People acting on that realization and loving themselves enough to demand for leaders who love them. People who are willing to step in front in courage and say, this isn't right and you're not going to do it to me anymore. And the thing, I have been looking at Mercy this whole time and her t-shirt saying, Kenya ni home. Kenya belongs to Kenyans, and it must work for all Kenyans, regardless of who you are, where you're from, your gender, your race, your religion, whatever. As long as you're a Kenyan, you were born here, your parents were born here, please, this country belongs to you. There's no one who's going to come and tell you that you have no right to do X, Y, Z. And that ultimate love and courage is enshrined in Article 1. We the
people shall. Not me. Maurice, okay. Then there's a comment right next to Nepurko. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Audrey, and first of all, I'd like to extend my deepest condolences, my sincere condolences to each and every person who lost their lives and everyone who was actually abducted or went through the worst during this protest. It didn't have to happen because of signing a piece of paper. And for that alone, it means there should be no dialogue because we shouldn't have been here right now if these people lost their lives. So that window closed the moment Rex died, the moment the first person was abducted. The maiming, the killing, the abductions, all of those closed that window. And anyone who wants to go to speak for us, we are leaderless. So it's up to them and the president. We honestly don't care. That is not part of us. Personally, I've been on the ground for the protest since the first one. So I've seen the kind of brutality that has been there. For me to be there tomorrow and any other day that the protest will be there is now to call for accountability from the government and each and every person. We know these people, they're outside, they're walking freely. So it doesn't make any sense. If we are supposed to sit down and talk about everything that's going on, then let's start by jailing each and every person who is responsible for all of this. Sorry. And then the second thing that I'd like to talk about is personally I say that we have 3 important tools in the whole movement. We have our voice, we have the Constitution, and the last one that probably people don't know is our identification cards, because our IDs are the last nail to the coffin. That is where we are supposed to use it in 2027 to vote. And that makes me urge each and every person out there, the youth, to go and apply for the identification cards. And that leads me to say, if we're saying Ruto must go, then he must go with each and every person who is in the office. Because in the case of the identification cards, we have Julius Bitok as the PS of the state of immigration.
Immigration, yes.
And yeah, he's the one who is in charge of identification cards, passports, and all of this. Tell me why someone who applied for an ID last year, November, does not have his ID right now. Does not make sense. Tell me why I'm supposed to pay for 1,000 bob to renew my ID, and I used to pay for 100. That's like, how it's insane, because I don't even remember if we had a public participation to sit down and say, okay, now we're going to increase from 100 to 1,000. Unajua hata mayai ikipanda ilikuwa 10 bob, 12 bob, 13, 15, sasa ni 17. Siku ingine ni 20. So 100 to 1,000 it's theft, daylight theft. We can see it. And it's malicious because we need these IDs to vote. So do you want to suppress our votes, or what do you want to do? Because there's no excuse as to why someone who applied for an ID in November doesn't have an ID right now. How are these people supposed to get jobs? You cannot hire someone to work without an ID, you see? So there are things that we're supposed to check and understand why exactly are happening, because we need these IDs to vote. If you don't have it, you can't vote. So this is voter suppression, you see? So people like Julius Bitok should actually resign by yesterday, not tomorrow.
Thank you.
Because why don't we have these IDs?
Yeah.
So at home, tell the young people, anyone who does not have an ID, go and take your ID. This is the last nail to the coffin. Ndio tutoa watu wote waende home.
Okay, thank you very much. Behind the two comments.
Yeah, I'm told also, as we also give an opportunity for Boniface, who's been online since, if he's there, he could join us. Once we see his signal that is up, we'll just hand it over to him. But sir, you could go ahead with, just say your name and your comment.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Guare. And I personally don't have a question. I don't have a comment, I have a question rather. And my question is the position of the judiciary, because like the case of Mercy, was it just that Mandago currently is still out there, as with all the evidences that are out there? Now it takes us back to the constitution on leadership and integrity. The aspect of integrity, we are lacking integrity in that particular leader, and he's still holding a spot in the government, or rather in power. That's one. Another thing is on independence. Like, 1963, 12th of December, Jamhuri Day, we celebrate it as independence. And are we truly independent as a nation? Looking at the cases of, we're telling, people are talking to power that let Ukraine be, let us as Kenya stay aside from that. We're talking of Haiti. Even the Haitians themselves are not for us going there. Oh, why are we going there? Just because someone went to White House or something? We have a lot of questions to ask, but there are those bits of our independence, the judiciary. Is it just that things have worked out the way they are? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You had something to say?
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir. Ndio Boni anarudi lakini endelea.
Mine is to turn you to, I'm usually very particular to details. Mine is to turn your attention to a self-confessed interview where the president, when he was campaigning after his fallout with Uhuru, I think it was some Gituku, and he said that immediately Kibaki won in 2002, they got an intel at State House. They were at State House, and they were saying, he said that they were told they should not attend the swearing, right? That was not important. What is important is he said someone was carrying a placard saying, William Ruto wanted, dead or alive. In 2002, he had not run for president, but someone was ahead of time. Look for that interview. You guys look for that interview.
Hadi nimeangusha mic, my God. Thank you.
Boni anacheka. Boni umesikia hiyo. Someone was ahead of time in 2002. Now, if we could just pump up his mic, because he can hear us. I can't quite hear him from his end. Just as a way of closing, and I don't know if this holds it for you too, John, tomorrow and moving forward, your irreducible minimum to, yeah, just to check his mic as well. Hebu sema tu kitu moja mbili.
Me?
Yeah, so he's clear. Just so that we can allow him, Bwana Umtata, so that he can log off. He wanted to log off. You'll allow us. Unless you want to address something.
I need him to address it.
Okay. Omtata kuna swali hapa.
Naongea sana.
I just want Mwangi.
Hold your mic up, please.
Mwangi to make a comment. We are not the first country to do this. We had the Arab Spring. And we know that when you see when the old order regrouped, both locally and globally, what became of the Arab Spring? How are we guarding against the Arab Spring? Then number two, our liberties have really been lost through innocuous moves that the ruling elite have undertaken. You and me know that something called pending bills is a new invention, because under the law, you are not supposed to incur expenditure when you don't have the money. So you should not be having pending bills. Now, from the push from the private sector and the push from especially SPAC, Kenya is shifting from cash-based accounting to what they call accrual-based accounting, whereby they're not going to cover up for this by carrying them into the next budgets. Because under the current system, you do an appropriation act, you have got the money, you appropriate it, you close the year. Next year is a new ball game. Now they're trying to shift that, and to me I'm seeing a very big danger of very organized theft now coming in with the validation of the Auditor General and others that we are going to be scammed again. So we also need to be awake to that, and I don't know what we can do about it in terms of being informed. Sometimes I think these foxes are more informed than we are. We do catch up at times.
Bonnie, would you like to respond to that as you make your final comments? Guarding against the fallout from the Arab Spring as it happened, what can we do differently? Yeah.
So we need to learn from them that we don't get the revolution being stolen by the politicians. So the young people in the streets need to prepare to join political parties or form a political party. They need to get IDs. And then they need to start telling the president they should issue IDs for free. At the moment, you pay 1,000 bob for an ID. It has an expiry date, which is, I think, it's very money-making scheme by the government. You shouldn't have an expiry date on the ID. So as we start talking about irreducible minimums, the first thing is actually let us get IDs. And number two, we need more funding on IBC so that people are able to continuously register. I want to be able to see at least 1,000 young kids going to the local IBC office every day to register to become voters. The second thing, I think it's a prayer to the president. I know yeye ni roho ngumu sana, asikiangi. But tumwambia yangu tu yani, stop killing kids. You can't bring people back to life when you do that. Tomorrow there's a peaceful protest in Nairobi and across the country. Our members of parliament have personal bodyguards. That's about 400 bodyguards. Some of them have bodyguards in their homes. Withdraw those people, take them to the streets to protect life and property. So we expect that tomorrow, wherever there be a protest in this country, no one is going to die, and the government protect everyone. And I think finally, what Kenyans are asking actually is an empathetic, loving government, and which actually has mercy. I lost my mother to cancer, my grandmother to cancer. Ruto was going to tax cancer medication. That means he's heartless when it comes to people who are poor and are sick. And when he was doing that, he was taking that money to give it to his wife and regard his wife. And so he needs to rethink ajite mkutano. Ajiulize, why don't see Kenya in the next years? Because he's a one-term president. Even if he survives this week and this year, Ruto will never be president again in this country. So right now, he should actually work towards legacy. Some of the members of his cabinet that he sent home stole money from us. We know, from the expensive lifestyle to the mansions they're building to the place they've bought, to recover that money. I know Ruto was called a thief when he was running. We still call him a thief and we call him a land grabber. But he can be the first land grabber who gets a Zacchaeus moment where he says, I return to all things that I've stolen. He can decide, you know what, moving forward, I'm going to become a clean president, because his entire life, since he joined politics in 1992, he has been dodged by controversy and scandals, and all manner of evils have been associated with him. Dr. Mashamba, Sugoi, Butcher, all these names. And he can decide to become clean by not bribing people. I think he doesn't understand how much people hate him. I think he goes to church and gives those people money, but behind the back, they really, really hate him because he does not connect with people on a human level. Does he have the language? Yes. But he does not see humans. He sees pawns in his political game. The problem is he's at the highest level of his career. And if he's not careful, the people who are complaining are going to harm himself. I've told this to the president and people around parliament and parliamentarians. You're forgetting that the people who protect you are Gen Zs. You forget that the police in Mabati Shantis are Gen Z. So if you continue killing young kids, the people who protect him are the ones who are going to kill him. And I'm not saying this as like I have inside information. I'm just saying if you keep killing kids, people who are parents are going to kill you because you can't keep killing kids. You have to stop killing kids because this is a very peaceful protest, but it can turn like this to become violent because the people who protect you have guns. They'll deal with you, you're dealing with other people's kids. So be very careful, Mr. President. Stop killing kids. Give us IBC, give us IDs, we send you home. No one is looking for power through the back door, actually. If you resign, you have new elections. If you don't resign and you don't kick you out, 2027, you're going home. Whether you be alive or not, you're going home, Mr. President. You should know that. Yeah. Now, Pendui, Asidanganya, by the way, Pendui, actually, members of parliament, you have powers to impeach this guy. Impeach him to Ndolezi Shida. Tafadhali. Like now, I'm not even in my house, I'm not with my kids. I have to hide. Maisha gani hii.
Thank you, Bonnie. Very, very, I think a grim prediction, but one that's not without precedent if you look around what's happening in different parts of Africa. I mean, who killed Laurent Kabila, you know, who tortured Sam Doe in Liberia. It was all those people who are around him, you know. So there really is precedent. Duke, I want to bring you in for your final comments. You've heard and listened to a lot. What are your things that you'd like to say before we close?
First of all, Bonnie, I hope if you're gone, good. If you're still there, I hope you're using a VPN.
Okay.
It's good to see you, man.
Santi.
Yeah, I'm sorry for what you're going through as you mentioned your kids as a father as well. I empathize with you, man. Just keep your head up and keep going, Itaisha. So,
Asante.
Having said all that, let me be a bit of a devil's advocate a bit. Let me just take a bit of a leaf from you. We want change. The government say they want to dialogue with us, no problem. But like on our own admission, we are leaderless, we are tribeless, we are partyless, but we are fearless. How this presents a very unique problem for the president, because if he wants to advance the agendas that people like us are putting in forums like this, how does he do it? Who does he talk to? We can talk, all of us here and all that, two-thirds gender rule. We can talk about, he talks about the new face of the cabinet showing the real face of Kenya. But let's call a spade a spade. If we need to put ourselves forward and show what we want to do, we must first, and when I say we, I know I'm not a Gen Z, I'm a millennial, but Gen Z is mental. We must first get what we call the accessories in order to do we have to get the scalpels first so that we can do the surgery. Right now we have no scalpels, we have no doctors, we have nothing. We have a patient who needs to be fixed or who needs to be operated on, but we have no one. So even if the government, look, I'm not advocating for them in any way or form, but I'm just trying to think, if they were to come and say, okay, we've heard you, we're saying we want to do this with you, who can we talk to? What can we do? Because if they go and do something, say for example, now that he hasn't signed the bill, and now he wants to, bring national talks, but the thing is, when we say we are leaderless, I beg to differ, because I'm sorry, Bonnie, your name is out there already. That's the reason why you're not at home. I'm sorry, but that's the reason why. Shadi as well. So the reason why these names keep propping up, and you know, when you come to a forum like this, Bonnie, and you say the things that you say, I understand why now you're not at home, because when you say this guy is gonna be a one-term president, you're painting a target on your back, bro. But this is what I need to say. I admire the hell out of you for doing that. Because if you don't do that, if we don't follow presidents like that, if we don't have a leader or leaders, then all we become is just, for lack of a better word, a movement. We have a cause, but it's a subjective. What I mean.
Yeah, no. I mean, you're making a point, and I'm seeing vigorous shaking of the head next to you.
No, I'm going to respond to what she says, because I'm sure there's some fire coming this way. In 2 seconds. But I just needed to make my point very clear.
Yeah.
I came here so that I can look at both sides of the fence. The president, look, the president, His Excellency, is our president. He's not a good president, but like it or not, he's Kenyan. We are all Kenyan. He's messed up. Let's just call it messed up.
Okay. Uteleza. Okay, no, okay, guys. Wacha amalize. Ngoja. Wacha amalize.
Ameteleza. Huyu ameteleza.
Okay.
Tumsikize. Finish your point.
Aya, maliza Duke.
Finish your point.
Maliza.
Let's finish your point.
All of us here and shout from the tops of our voices, Ruto must go. Yep. And we wake up tomorrow morning and he is still president. Our lives are not going to stop. But we have what we call brain, in the sense that if he doesn't go, my dear friend here can come to a forum like this with me, and we can have a conversation, and I'm sure wherever he is, he's listening. So, Mr. President, I am a glass half full type of guy. If you're not going to resign, yeah, of course, knowing him how he is, I mean, come on, he's not going to. If you're not going to resign, you have to listen to the people. Rohongu haitakusaidia. You have to listen to the people. You have to take what we are saying in stride. Stop abductions. I mean, look, we are not. I've had the displeasure of reading Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf. It's a distasteful book. But if you look at what's going on right now, Mark has just talked about David Lee. He reminds me of Joseph Goebbels. So in this situation, as I finish, done some silly things, very stupid, silly things. I mean, even him himself, he knows. What? Yes.
Like Duke, you should see the faces reacting to what.
Can I just jump in?
That's the beauty of having such fora, because
but that's not the point of this public forum, though.
Hold on.
No, but that's not the point
it's
of
not
this
the point. It's not the point.
forum.
It's not the point.
Duke, let's finish your point and then.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's finish it.
Listen. The point of the forum, you see, I am not here to vilify. If I didn't come here just to complain or this, that. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. No. So I'm here to put across my opinion. You're welcome to have your own opinion, right? True. So my opinion is simple, John and Mark. As I close, you asked a question, or rather it was Mark who asked, is it over for the president? Can he sort himself out? Can he do this? Can he do that? Or is it just simply Ruto must go? I think the simple answer to that question is simple, like this. He just has to listen to the people. It is as simple as that. Because you're not going anywhere. That's just my point.
All right.
Can I say a few things? I really was gonna end in a prayer, because I need to pray for everybody who's going to the protest tomorrow. I still will, and I just want. Now I have to go to church. Anyway, If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. This is an old, lazy, unimaginative narrative that was peddled even when we were doing Take Back Kenya, if you remember, when we were doing, we were championing for police rights, and we were tear gassed for fighting for the police of Kenya, to have decent housing, health care, to be seen as a professional unit of organizing and doing whatever they do. We were tear gassed, right? I was fucking shot at Uhuru Park. I don't talk about these things because who the fuck cares, right? So you can't have that narrative now in a moment of crisis, in a moment where every voice in this country is saying we are the goddamn solution. It's not right. The other thing about this leaderless, we don't have this, we don't have that. Being leaderless is not the same as being disorganized. This is the most organized ever movement we've seen in this country in history. Please, let's give the children the due respect they deserve. Please, let's give the people who support them the respect they deserve. And I really hated to come here and preach because I've changed my ways and now I don't even drink gin. This is a problem. Anyway, I need to say the last thing, which is when he said that this leader, this movement has no leaders, but Boni's name is out there, Shadi's name is out there, Hanifa's name is out there. I'm going to throw that to everybody else who's saying the same thing you're saying, which is stop outsourcing your courage to the people who have chosen to be as bold as the Constitution allows them to be, so that you can be the next Boniface Mwangi. The reason why it's easy to single out Boniface Mwangi and Shadrach and Schaefer and Mark and whomever is being singled is because we decide to come to the front line and stay in the front line and be the fucking front line. Do you see? So please, can we stop outsourcing your courage? Stop imagining that there are Kenyans who are built of spades. We are all people. You know, at the end of the day, nobody even wants to be in the streets. We all want to be home with our kids, holding somebody, confusing them, but we are here fighting. No.
Sorry.
So we can't distract the movement. We really can't.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with anything you've said at all.
Before you,
it's just that it's just that I have a different opinion based on what you said. And look, an opinion is just that. I mean, look, when we have, come on, look.
Wait. Okay.
No. Let's just say it.
When you say, okay.
And he was arguing that the numbers are false. But people have died.
No, but.
So you can have a different opinion, but please honor the work that's going on.
Oh my God. I have not disagreed with anything.
Okay.
Look, what I'm saying is, if I may.
You said opinions are opinions, everyone has them.
Yep. And if I may respond to what she said.
Real quick, really, because you need to
give us your opinion.
Okay.
Really quick.
Exactly.
Yeah. Make your point.
Exactly.
Make your point.
Yeah. So.
Very well, sir.
So I agree. I have not disagreed with anything you've said, Madam. I agree with you wholeheartedly. All I'm saying is, I have a different view in the sense that, for me, it is not all lost.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Kenya. For me, lives have been lost and people have died for this cause. That is inexcusable. That's true. But for me, I believe this. We can rise from the ashes like a phoenix. If the president stops Rohongumu, Aache, all this bravado, all blah, 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 and listens to the people, that is all I'm saying. He can save. There's someone who's just said here that Atakama, the president ni mwizi. He can be the first thief who brings us from the
who pulls us from the fire.
From the fire. So it's okay. I mean, look, Madam, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. All I'm saying is I have a different view from it.
Okay.
Having a different view from it isn't saying that you're wrong. Okay. Cheers.
Okay.
Just allow me.
When we say we the people, we just think that because you are born in Kenya, you are whatever, you are part of the people, you are not. We the people are those who, under Article 255 of the Constitution, can go to a referendum and change that Constitution. Yeah. Or through the elected representatives can change that Constitution. We the people are the registered voters. We the people are not just where you are born.
We the people are those people who have taken their time to be registered voters. So when you say we the people, look at Article 255, and you're told you can do whatever you want to throw this constitution away, provided you are a registered voter who can participate in a referendum. So what that young girl said about registering for voters, doing whatever, the majoritarian institutions must be filled by people who think like you. The only way decisions are made in this country is through politics. And so let us organize, let us take over these majoritarian institutions, then mold Kenya in the image of the Constitution, the image of the National Assembly. But if we think that we the people is everybody and anybody, then we are missing it. And that's why I think that listening to him also should sober us up to the question of who is we the people and what are we doing to be the people who can determine the destiny of this country through the Constitution of Kenya. And the movement is not an end in itself. It's a journey to a destination. Let us forget it. Let us not think that the victory was won when you stormed Parliament. It was not. You are journeying to a destination. And what is the destination? The destination is good governance. And how do you arrive there? Majoritarian institutions must be taken over so that decisions, policies, and whatever are made in such a way that they endanger good governance. Thank you.
Asante sana. Now, Mercy to have your opinion and say.
Duke, you had started really well. No, really, we have to give flowers where they are due. Yes? When you said he called us treasonous criminals, and then kiasi imebaki tu kidogo usalimiwe, and not by anyone from this side, but from the lady seated behind you. And yes, we are tolerating different opinions, but we cannot excuse the failures of this man. And when you say ameteleza, it takes away from everything that you started with. We cannot call this asleep. People have died. People have died, guys. People have died. Children have 12-year-olds. Where is it right that we can start saying a 12-year-old alikufa, and then we start debate? It is that debate of how many bullets, how old was the kid that got us here, and then now we start saying this man ameteleza. This is again the same man who, when we went for the 25th protests, he unleashed his most lethal weapon against us. After calling us treasonous criminals, he went ahead and unconstitutionally called on the KDF to come and patrol the streets. How can this man save himself? First of all, it is okay that you have said he can change and he can lead us better, but let us consider that this man did not get here by leading us better, by being better. He got here through lies, he got here through intimidation, he got here through basically manipulating the system. And anyone who was competent enough in that system has been removed. And honest people have been removed from the system because they know honest people will, they will tell you the truth, and they will tell everyone the truth. And so they remove the honest people and put incompetent people so that he can lord over them, he can patron over them. Now, even if he wanted to, he does not have competent people in office. When we look at the CEOs of parastatals, these men, they are not, most of them are men. We have a few women, but they do not portray the face of Kenya. They do not portray the face of Kenya. So I think it is important that we consider that as much as we want to give him leeway, we cannot disagree with the lives. We cannot revive the 12-year-old kids. We cannot revive the 9-month-old kid. We cannot do that.
All right. I think on that note of, I guess, slight disagreement, but the kind of debate that you want to have, where, as Oke Omtata said, where every opinion can be heard, shall be heard, even though there's robust disagreement. I think this would be a great place to kind of wind things up, right? And I say this because the conflict in the conversation that you had, Shefa, just now with Duke, with Okia chiming in, and with Mercy as well, is better than the conflict between a person who is saying something and a person holding a gun. The conflict is better than a person who is seeking freedom but has their money stolen from them. This debate, spirited as it has wound up being, I think is the sort of thing that you want from a democracy, from a country that is in the midst of struggle towards a specific destination. Look, guys, it was supposed to be 2 hours of conversation. And I've seen people checking their watches, but still listening intently. And I'm grateful for this time that we've been able to spend together. So to the people who've been online listening to us, and to the people who've commented one way or another about the position that we're in. Obviously, thank you to some of the people who we asked to speak: Shefa, Duke, Darius, Senator Omtata in absentia, as well as Mercy and Boni, who joined us online. Unfortunately, Hanifa wasn't able to join us because the process apparently is still ongoing. We thank you for participating with us. Mark, thanks for inviting me to your forum so that we can do this thing. I hope we can do it again.
Oh, we definitely will. Actually, thank you for bringing up the conversation. It was just last week, and we said, let's do it. Someone said, and I'd like to thank the thousands others who've joined online.
Yeah.
And with their comments, and we agreeing, disagreeing, that's what this conversation is about. Someone asking or saying, you should have the president here so he can answer all the questions. In fact, the door is open. The invitation is
open. Invitation to President William Ruto.
Exactly.
You can come sit in this chair, ask the questions, answer the questions, hear the anger, listen to the profanity.
Yeah.
Maybe he has some profane things to say himself. You never know, right? But nonetheless, let's get this thing moving towards the destination that all Kenyans desire for us, which is a better place, a place where there's fairness, there's equity, there's opportunity for everybody, not just some people. I think that's where I'd wind up.
And even to appreciate Professor Kivuta Kibwana, who's also one of the seniors in the struggle for the country, a leader in the Fungamano initiative, taking a picture right now in a selfie, a picture with the Senator Okiya Omtata. We really appreciate the audience here, physical audience that has been here have been patient, given comments and questions as well. The technical team around this production making it possible. ALUTA CONTINUA was made possible because of you, all of you here, and you. And we appreciate this has been a collaboration between Semabox, the social newsroom, and Africa Uncensored with John Allen Namu and the team that is backing him up as well. And we also like to thank Baraza Media Lab for hosting us in this space. This is definitely not the last, John. Asanteni sana. You all have a good night. My name is Mark Masai. It's been a pleasure. Asanteni.
Asante sana.